You are listening to the Overwatch with Suburban Prepper, the most comprehensive preparedness broadcast in existence. I am a combat veteran and a licensed family nurse practitioner with 2 wars, 2 combat medical roles, and 0 patience for bullshit. If you are here, you are serious about preparedness. Good, so am I. Let us go. I need to start today with breaking news that is developing in real time as I record this, and I need you to pay very close attention because what happened in the last 72 hours with Iran is the most significant development since this war started in February, and depending on which headline you read, it is either the beginning of the end of the war or the last warning before the biggest military operation since World War II. On Friday night, August 1st, President Trump announced on Truth Social that the United States was locked and loaded and ready to go against the Islamic Republic of Iran at levels of military terror, strength, and power not seen since World War II. Those are his words. Locked and loaded. Not seen since World War II. That is not diplomatic language. That is a threat of total war. And then he pulled the trigger back. He said he had been asked by Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to hold off because the parameters of a deal had been agreed to. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman personally called Trump and pushed for de-escalation. Israel joined the commitment. The strikes, which multiple U.S. officials confirmed were planned for that weekend, were canceled. Saturday morning, the world exhaled, briefly. Then Iran's foreign ministry responded, and I need you to hear exactly what they said because it is the opposite of what the president told you. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmail Bakai said on television that under no circumstances will the Strait of Hormuz return to its pre-war situation, regardless of outcome. Under no circumstances. That is not a negotiating position. That is a line in the sand. Then an Iranian official told reporters that there are no negotiations ongoing with the United States. No negotiations ongoing. While the President of the United States is telling the American people that a deal is imminent. Then on Sunday, 20 ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz. That is up from single digits last week. The U.S. Navy reportedly escorted some of those tankers across the waterway. That sounds like progress until you realize that before the war, hundreds of ships crossed the strait daily. 20 is not normal. 20 is a trickle through a garden hose that used to be a fire hydrant. Oil dropped 5% to around $80 a barrel on Monday on the optimism. The market wanted to believe. Traders wanted to believe. Everyone wanted to believe. Then today, Monday, August 3rd, a tanker was reported being attacked off the coast of Oman, while the optimism was still warm, while the headlines were still saying deal imminent. A tanker got hit. And Trump went right back to the other tone. This morning, he posted on Truth Social that Iranian leadership is unbelievably duplicitous. This afternoon, he told reporters that this is Iran's last chance to sign a deal before decapitation. Last chance before decapitation. Those are the words of the President of the United States, recorded on camera today. Let me tell you what is actually happening, because the headlines are giving you whiplash, and you need someone to hold the picture still for a minute. Iran is not negotiating with the United States. Iran is negotiating with Oman to establish what they are calling a temporary safe route through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the same thing as reopening the strait. That is Iran maintaining control of the waterway while allowing limited traffic through a corridor they define, on their terms, through a mediator they chose. The United States is claiming negotiations are ongoing. Iran is denying it. The president is swinging between deal is imminent and last chance before decapitation within the same 24-hour period. A tanker was attacked today, and Iran's foreign ministry has publicly stated that the strait will never return to its pre-war status, regardless of what happens. This is not peace. This is not war ending. This is a negotiation where one side says there is a deal, and the other side says there is no deal, and a ship got hit in between. I have seen this pattern before. In June, a memorandum of understanding was signed in Geneva. Both sides agreed to a 60-day ceasefire and the reopening of the strait. It held for roughly 2 weeks. Then fighting resumed. The ceasefire collapsed. Gas prices spiked back up. Service members died. And here we are again with the same optimistic headlines and the same Iranian denials. I support this president. I voted for this president. And I am telling you right now, do not change a single thing about your preparedness posture based on what you are hearing. Not one thing. The posture is the same it has been since February. tank at half or better, fuel stored, pantry stocked, generator tested, medical kit audited, communications plan current. If this deal materializes and the strait opens and oil flows and gas drops, you will have extra fuel stored and it will not go to waste. If this deal falls apart in 2 weeks, like the last one did, you will be glad you did not relax. There is no downside to staying ready. There is enormous downside to letting your guard down because of a Truth Social post. Trust but verify. And as of today, August 3rd, 2026, Iranian state media is calling the president duplicitous. The president is calling Iran duplicitous. A tanker was attacked off Oman, and the only ships crossing the strait are doing so under U.S. Navy escort at a fraction of normal volume. That is not peace. That is a standoff with a press release. Now let me talk Ebola, because while Iran is dominating every cable news channel, the Ebola outbreak just hit numbers that should terrify anyone paying attention. As of July 30th, the Democratic Republic of Congo has reported 3,605 confirmed cases and 1,621 deaths. 3,999 total reported cases when you include suspected cases. We are 1 case away from 4,000. 567 new confirmed cases were reported in the most recent week. That is the highest single-week number since the outbreak was declared in mid-May. Not stabilizing, not slowing, accelerating. The outbreak is growing faster now than it was a month ago. The case fatality rate is 44.1%. For every 100 people confirmed to have this virus, 44 of them die. Over the last 2 months, the outbreak has expanded from Ituri province to 5 additional provinces and is now affecting 49 health zones. It remains active in 33 of them, with confirmed cases still being reported. Ituri accounts for 88% of all confirmed cases and 82.6% of deaths. 807 patients are currently in isolation or hospitalized. 626 have recovered. The rest are dead. Carl Scow, the acting head of the United Nations World Food Program, told Reuters, and I want you to hear this clearly, it is the fastest spreading Ebola epidemic that we have ever seen. The world needs to pay much more attention. The fastest spreading Ebola epidemic ever seen, ever, in recorded history. And the acting head of the World Food Program is publicly saying the world is not paying enough attention. He is right. The world is watching Iran. The world is watching oil prices. The world is watching Trump's Truth Social posts. And meanwhile, in eastern Congo, 567 people were confirmed to have Ebola in a single week, and 1/3 of them are already dead or will be dead within days. There is no approved vaccine for the Bundibugyo strain. There is no approved treatment. Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, has over 1,400 staff on the ground in DRC, and they are publicly saying that conflict-related insecurity, airport closures, flight restrictions, and foreign aid cuts are disrupting every aspect of the response. The coming rainy season will raise the risk of further spread. The travel restriction order that Trump signed on July 13th, suspending entry of certain foreign nationals from DRC, expires on August 12th. That is 9 days from now. If it is not extended, the only barrier between this outbreak and American soil becomes voluntary screening at airports. And voluntary screening has failed to catch imported cases in every previous international Ebola event. I upgraded Ebola from elevated to severe 2 episodes ago. That rating stands. If anything, it is underrated. This is not an outbreak anymore. This is an epidemic, the second largest in history, growing faster than any previous Ebola event, with no vaccine, no treatment, and a response that is being outpaced by the virus. Your pandemic kit should already be built. If it is not, I do not know what you are waiting for. N95 masks for every household member for 30 days, nitrile gloves, face shields, hand sanitizer, a 30-day supply of prescription medications, a written isolation protocol for your household. If you do not have these things in your home right now, today is the day, not next episode, today. Let me talk about the economy because the Iran situation is creating a whipsaw in energy markets that is going to hit your wallet regardless of which direction the deal goes. Oil dropped 5% today to around $80 a barrel on the deal optimism. That sounds like good news until you realize that crude was at $67 before the war started in February. $80 is not cheap oil. It is less expensive war oil. The baseline has shifted upward, and it is not going back to pre-war levels until the strait is genuinely, completely, and permanently reopened. A temporary route negotiated through Oman is not that. 20 ships crossed the strait over the weekend. Before the war, roughly 60 to 70 tankers crossed daily, carrying 21 million barrels of oil. 20 ships is less than a third of normal volume. Even if the temporary route is established, the capacity will be a fraction of pre-war throughput. Insurance premiums for vessels transiting the strait are 4 to 5 times higher than before the war. Many shipping companies are still refusing to send tankers through, regardless of military escort. What this means for gas prices is uncertainty, and uncertainty is worse than high prices because you cannot plan around uncertainty. Gas could drop if a deal materializes. Gas could spike if the deal falls apart and Trump follows through on decapitation. Gas could stay exactly where it is while everyone waits to see who blinks first. Your fuel budget cannot be based on any of those scenarios. It has to be based on what you can control, which is how much fuel you have stored and how much is in your tank right now. The half-tank rule. I say it every episode because it is the single most important fuel discipline in preparedness. When your tank hits half, you fill it. In a crisis, gas stations run out within hours. The fuel in your tank when the crisis starts is the fuel you have for the crisis. Do not let a 5% drop in oil prices make you complacent. The tanker that got attacked today off Oman did not get the memo about the deal being imminent. Food prices. The USDA's latest data shows fresh vegetable prices up 9.9% year over year. Lettuce up 32%, tomatoes up 19%, beef up 15%, and predicted to climb another 10% through the rest of the year. The World Bank predicts global fertilizer prices will increase 31% in 2026. Economists are predicting food inflation could reach 11% by December. Ground beef at $6.82 a pound. That number has not changed since last episode because structural inflation does not reverse in a week. The cattle herd contraction is real. The tariff pressure is real. The energy cost embedded in every product on the shelf is real. None of the drivers are resolving. They are compounding. Buy food storage. Rice, beans, oats, canned meats, peanut butter, cooking oil. 50 pounds of white rice in a Mylar bag with oxygen absorbers costs $20 to $30 in stores for 25 to 30 years. That is 80,000 calories for the price of a restaurant meal. Do it today. Now let me give you the threat board. 5 threats. Military briefing format. No speculation. No fear-mongering. Just the assessment. Threat 1. Iran war and Strait of Hormuz. I am rating this severe with a trend of volatile. I am using a new word for this one because uncertain does not capture what is happening. Volatile means the situation is changing hour by hour, and the range of possible outcomes spans from a genuine peace deal to the largest U.S. military operation since World War II. Those are the president's own words. Both outcomes are on the table simultaneously. A tanker was attacked today while the president was telling reporters a deal is imminent. The strait is partially open with 20 ships crossing under escort versus hundreds daily before the war. Iran says the strait will never return to pre-war status. The president says this is their last chance before decapitation. That is volatile. Your action item. Do not change your posture. Maintain fuel stores. Maintain half-tank discipline. Be prepared for either outcome. If the deal holds, you lose nothing. If it fails, you need everything you have stored. Threat 2. Ebola Bundibugyo epidemic. I am rating this severe with a trend of accelerating. Not increasing, accelerating. There is a difference. Increasing means it is getting worse. Accelerating means it is getting worse faster. 567 new confirmed cases in the most recent week. That is the highest single-week count since the outbreak began. 3,605 confirmed cases total. 1,621 dead. dead, 44% case fatality rate, 49 health zones affected across 6 provinces. No vaccine, no treatment. The response is being outpaced by the virus. 1,400 doctors without borders staff on the ground, and they publicly say it is not enough. The travel restriction order expires in 9 days. This is the most dangerous public health event on the planet right now, and most Americans do not know it is happening. Your action item: complete pandemic kit for every household member. N95s, gloves, face shields, hand sanitizer, 30-day prescription medication buffer, written isolation protocol. If you work in healthcare, audit your facility's infectious disease preparedness now, not when a case shows up, now. Threat 3. Food price inflation. I am rating this high, with a trend of increasing. Grocery prices up 3% year over year overall, but fresh vegetables up nearly 10%, lettuce up 32%, beef up 15%. Fertilizer predicted to increase 31%. Economists projecting 11% food inflation by December. Consumer confidence at 90.8, down from above 100 last year. 3 out of 4 Americans say grocery prices are the leading cause of reduced affordability. Your action item: one additional round of food storage this episode. Focus on calorie-dense staples and protein. Rice, beans, canned meats, peanut butter, oats, cooking oil. Threat 4. Energy price volatility. I am rating this high, with a trend of volatile. Same as Iran, because it is directly tied to Iran. Oil dropped 5% today to $80 a barrel on deal optimism. Before the war, it was 67. Even with the drop, energy costs remain significantly elevated. Insurance premiums for straight transit are 4 to 5 times pre-war levels. A tanker was attacked today. The temporary route Iran is negotiating through Oman would carry a fraction of pre-war capacity even if established. Your action item: store fuel regardless of price direction. 5 gallons stabilized minimum. Top off propane if you heat with propane. Summer fill rates are still cheaper than fall rates. Call your propane supplier today. Threat 5. Hurricane season peak months. I am rating this elevated, with a trend of increasing. August through October is when 85% of Atlantic tropical cyclones develop. 2 named storms so far, Arthur and Bertha, neither significant. El Niño is expected to suppress activity, but NOAA still forecasts 8 to 14 named storms. Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures are above normal. No active tropical development as of today, but the season is just entering its peak. It takes one storm to change everything. Your action item: if you are on the Gulf Coast or Atlantic Coast, complete your hurricane readiness audit right now. Pre-cut plywood or shutters, generator tested and fueled, water stored, food for 2 weeks, evacuation routes mapped and driven, vehicle at half tank or better. Now let me connect these dots, because most people look at the threat board and see 5 separate stories. I see one system. And this episode, the system is more interconnected than it has ever been. The Iran deal, if it materializes, partially reopens the strait. Partial reopening increases oil flow, but not to pre-war levels. Oil prices moderate but remain elevated. Gas prices come down slightly but not to pre-war levels. Food prices continue climbing because the tariff and fertilizer pressures are independent of Iran. The economy gets a temporary reprieve but not a cure. If the deal fails, Trump executes the decapitation strikes. Oil spikes to $100 or more overnight. Gas follows. Diesel follows. Everything that moves on a truck, which is everything in America, gets more expensive immediately. Food prices accelerate past the 11% projection. The Fed is forced to raise rates in September. The economy tips toward recession. And our military resources are diverted deeper into the Middle East, further reducing our capacity to respond to the Ebola epidemic that is accelerating in Central Africa. And if a hurricane enters the Gulf on top of either scenario, disrupting refinery capacity along the Texas and Louisiana coast, while the strait is partially closed or fully disrupted, energy prices enter a crisis that makes the current situation look mild. These threats do not exist in isolation. They compound. They feed each other. A failure in one area cascades into every other area. That is why systems thinking is not an academic exercise on this show. It is a survival skill. The person who understands how these threats interact is the person who sees the crisis coming before it arrives and has time to prepare. Your assignment from this segment: update your threat board. Print these 5 threats with their ratings and post them on your refrigerator next to your PACE plan. Review them with your family. Assign 1 prep task per threat. That is 5 tasks this episode. 1 per threat. Do them all. Let me talk politics. facts, and I am not going to pretend to be neutral. I support President Trump. I voted for him. I will probably vote for him again. And what I am about to say comes from a place of loyalty, not opposition. The messaging on Iran is a problem. Friday night, the president tells America, we are locked and loaded for the biggest military operation since World War II. Saturday morning, he tells America the deal parameters have been agreed to. Saturday afternoon, Iran says there is no deal, and the strait will never return to pre-war status. Sunday, 20 ships cross the strait, and the president says a deal is imminent. Monday morning, he calls Iran unbelievably duplicitous. Monday afternoon, he says this is their last chance before decapitation. That is 4 completely different messages in 72 hours, from the same person, about the same situation. I understand the negotiating strategy. I understand that Trump uses public statements as leverage. I understand that the unpredictability is part of the approach. But the American people cannot plan their lives around unpredictability. The prepper who is trying to decide whether to buy fuel today or wait for the deal to drop prices cannot make that decision when the president is saying both war and peace are imminent simultaneously. The markets cannot either. Oil dropped 5% today, and a tanker got attacked the same day. That is not stability. That is chaos priced in. Here's what I want to see. I want to see the strait open, not 20 ships under escort, hundreds of ships daily, with normal insurance premiums and no military convoy required. I want to see gas come down to pre-war levels. I want to see Iran's nuclear program verifiably ended. Those are the president's own stated goals. I support every one of them, but goals are not results. And right now the results are a partially open strait, elevated oil prices, an attacked tanker, and dueling accusations of duplicity. If the president delivers a genuine deal that achieves those goals, I will come on this show and give him full credit. He will have earned it. But until the results match the posts, my preparedness posture does not change, and neither should yours. The 50% Canadian tariff is still in effect. Canada is still the largest trading partner of the United States by volume. Lumber, natural gas, crude oil, potash, fertilizer, aluminum, steel, uranium, and agricultural products are all 50% more expensive coming from Canada. Nobody is talking about this because Iran dominates the news cycle. But the tariff did not expire while you were watching the Strait of Hormuz. It is a structural inflation driver that compounds everything else. A TF regulatory update. No major new actions. Pistol brace rule still in litigation. Frame and receiver rule still being challenged. Stay current through the Firearms Policy Coalition. Let me talk weather. August is peak season. Heat, hurricanes, grid stress, and wildfires all converge this month. No active tropical development in the Atlantic as of today, but the Gulf of Mexico's sea surface temperatures are above normal, and the peak of hurricane season runs from mid-August through mid-October. If you are in a hurricane-prone area, your readiness audit should be complete before the next tropical wave shows up on the satellite imagery. The PJM interconnection nearly broke its all-time demand record during the July 4th heat wave. The DOE issued emergency orders. ERCOT in Texas set what may be a new demand record in late July. Both grids are under elevated summer demand heading into August, which historically brings the peak load days of the year. If you are in Texas, the Mid-Atlantic, or the Midwest, test your backup power this episode. Start your generator. Run it under load for 30 minutes. Check fuel levels. Check oil. If you have battery backup or solar, verify charge levels and inverter function. Do not discover your backup does not work during a blackout. Canadian wildfire smoke continues to affect air quality across portions of the northern United States. Check your local air quality index before outdoor work. Now let me talk medicine. This episode's sick call covers something that is directly relevant to both the Ebola threat and the hurricane season entering peak months. Dehydration. Not the kind where you feel thirsty and drink a glass of water, the kind that kills. I have treated dehydration casualties in the Middle East during Desert Storm. I have treated them in Afghanistan. I have treated them in clinical practice as a nurse practitioner. And I will tell you that dehydration is one of the most underestimated killers in any crisis scenario, because it does not look dramatic. There is no blood, there is no explosion, there is no visible wound. There is just a person who slowly stops functioning and then their organs fail. Here is the physiology. Your body is approximately 60% water by weight. Water is the medium in which every chemical reaction in your body takes place. Your blood volume depends on adequate hydration. Your kidneys require water to filter waste. Your brain requires adequate perfusion to function. Your muscles require fluid to contract. Your thermoregulatory system requires water to produce sweat for cooling. Remove water from any of these systems and they degrade. Remove enough water and they fail. Mild dehydration, a loss of 1 to 2% of body weight in fluid, produces thirst, dry mouth, decreased urine output, and mild fatigue. Most people experience this level daily and correct it by drinking. Moderate dehydration, a loss of 3 to 5% of body weight, produces significantly decreased urine output with dark, concentrated urine, dry mucous membranes, increased heart rate, decreased skin turgor where the skin does not snap back quickly when pinched on the back of the hand, headache, dizziness, and irritability. At this level, performance is measurably impaired. Cognitive function declines, physical endurance drops, decision-making degrades. In a crisis scenario where you need to think clearly and act decisively, moderate dehydration is already compromising your ability to do both. Severe dehydration, a loss of 6 to 10% or more of body weight, is a medical emergency. Heart rate is rapid and weak, blood pressure drops, skin is cool and clammy, urine output ceases. The person becomes confused, lethargic, or unconscious. Seizures can occur. Organ failure follows. Without IV fluid resuscitation or aggressive oral rehydration, severe dehydration kills. In a grid-down scenario, dehydration can happen faster than you expect for several reasons. Your water supply may be compromised or limited. The physical labor of survival, chopping wood, clearing debris, hauling water, maintaining security, increases fluid loss through sweat. Heat accelerates fluid loss. Stress accelerates fluid loss. Vomiting and diarrhea from contaminated water or foodborne illness accelerate fluid loss dramatically. A person with gastroenteritis, vomiting and diarrhea simultaneously, can become severely dehydrated within 12 to 24 hours, even if they were fully hydrated at onset. And in the context of Ebola, dehydration is the primary mechanism of death. Ebola causes massive fluid loss through vomiting, diarrhea, and hemorrhage. Patients die not from the virus directly, but from the hypovolemic shock caused by fluid loss that the body cannot replace fast enough. In clinical settings, aggressive IV fluid resuscitation is the cornerstone of supportive care for Ebola patients. Without IV access, oral rehydration is the only alternative. Here is your grid-down dehydration management protocol. Prevention first. Every adult needs a minimum of 2 to 3 liters of water daily in moderate conditions. In hot conditions or during physical labor, that number doubles to 4 to 6 liters or more. You must have the water supply and purification capability to meet this demand for every member of your household for the duration of any crisis. Water storage, water purification tablets, gravity-fed water filters, and the knowledge to purify water from natural sources are not optional preps. They are the foundation of everything else. Oral rehydration therapy. The WHO oral rehydration solution I have covered in previous episodes is the single most important medical recipe in grid-down medicine. 1 liter of clean water, 6 level teaspoons of sugar, 1/2 level teaspoon of salt. Mix thoroughly. This is not a sports drink. This is a clinical intervention that has saved millions of lives worldwide. The sugar is not for calories. It is because the sodium-glucose co-transport mechanism in the small intestine requires both sodium and glucose present simultaneously to absorb water efficiently. Without the sugar, the salt water is not absorbed as effectively. Enhanced version. Add 1/4 teaspoon of potassium chloride, sold as salt substitute under the brand names No Salt or New Salt at any grocery store. Add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda for bicarbonate, a splash of lemon or lime juice for flavor and additional potassium. This enhanced version is as effective as any commercial electrolyte product. Make a batch today. Practice the recipe until you can do it from memory. Memorize the ratios. 1 liter of water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Those 3 numbers can save a life. burn them into your brain. Assessment without labs. In a grid-down scenario, you will not have blood tests to measure electrolytes or kidney function. You are going clinical. Here is how you assess hydration status without labs. Urine output and color. This is your single best field indicator. Clear to light yellow urine in adequate volume means hydration is acceptable. Dark yellow to amber urine in small volume means dehydration is progressing. No urine output for more than 8 hours in an adult who is conscious means severe dehydration and you are in an emergency. Skin turgor. Pinch the skin on the back of the hand and release. In a well-hydrated person, the skin snaps back immediately. In a dehydrated person, the skin remains tented for 2 or more seconds before slowly returning to normal. This test is less reliable in elderly patients whose skin loses elasticity with age, regardless of hydration. Mucous membranes. Look inside the mouth. Moist pink membranes indicate adequate hydration. Dry, sticky membranes indicate dehydration. Cracked lips can indicate dehydration, but can also be caused by wind and sun exposure, so use it in combination with other signs. Heart rate and blood pressure. As dehydration progresses, heart rate increases as the heart tries to maintain cardiac output with less blood volume. Blood pressure drops as volume decreases. A rapid, weak pulse with low blood pressure in the context of known fluid loss is a sign of significant dehydration approaching hypovolemic shock. Mental status. Confusion, irritability, lethargy, or altered consciousness in the setting of possible fluid loss is a red flag for severe dehydration. Ask orientation questions. Do they know their name, where they are, what day it is? Declining mental status in the context of dehydration means the brain is not getting adequate perfusion. This is an emergency. Capillary refill. Press on a fingernail until it blanches white. Release and count how many seconds it takes for the color to return. Normal is under 2 seconds. Greater than 2 seconds suggests poor peripheral perfusion, which can indicate dehydration among other causes. Treatment in the field. If the patient can drink, oral rehydration solution in small, frequent sips, not gulping, sips. Large volumes taken quickly can trigger vomiting, which worsens the fluid loss. Small sips, frequently, continuously. 200 to 400 milliliters per hour for moderate dehydration. Increase is tolerated. If the patient is vomiting and cannot keep oral fluids down, you have a serious problem in a grid-down scenario. Rectal fluid administration is an austere medicine technique that bypasses the stomach entirely. Using a clean syringe or enema setup, warm ORS solution is slowly instilled into the rectum, where it is absorbed through the rectal mucosa. This is not a comfortable procedure, and it is not something most people have practiced. But in a grid-down scenario, where a patient is vomiting, cannot keep oral fluids down, and has no IV access, it is the only option that can save their life. The technique is covered in detail in the Grid-Down Medicine series inside TPP. If you have IV capability, normal saline or lactated ringer solution administered intravenously is the gold standard for treating significant dehydration. IV fluid administration requires training, supplies, and sterile technique. If you have the skills and the supplies, this is your first-line treatment for severe dehydration. If you do not, oral and rectal rehydration are your alternatives. Inside the Total Preparedness Program, the Grid-Down Medicine series covers dehydration assessment and management in complete clinical detail, including IV fluid administration, oral rehydration protocols, rectal fluid administration, and the management of dehydration in pediatric patients who dehydrate faster and more dangerously than adults. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Your sick call action item. Do you have the ingredients to make oral rehydration solution stored in your medical kit right now? Sugar, salt, and potassium chloride. Those 3 items cost less than $5 total, and they are the most important medical supplies you can own. If you do not have them staged and ready, fix that today. Now the alternative medicine side. I want to talk about something directly relevant to dehydration management and general resilience during a crisis. Electrolyte balance and the role of specific minerals that most people are deficient in. Magnesium. I covered this briefly in the MS module, but I want to go deeper here because magnesium deficiency is one of the most common nutritional deficits in America, and it has direct implications for crisis performance. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. It is essential for muscle function, nerve conduction, heart rhythm, blood sugar regulation, and protein synthesis. It is also a cofactor in the production of adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is the energy currency of every cell in your body. Without adequate magnesium, your cells cannot produce energy efficiently. Fatigue, muscle cramps, and impaired performance follow. The standard American diet is deficient in magnesium for most people. Processed foods are stripped of magnesium during manufacturing. Soil depletion has reduced the magnesium content of vegetables over the past 50 years. Stress depletes magnesium. Physical exertion depletes magnesium. Sweating depletes magnesium. In a crisis scenario where stress is constant, physical labor is required, and diet may be limited to stored foods that are lower in mineral content, magnesium depletion accelerates. Symptoms of magnesium deficiency include muscle cramps and spasms, fatigue, irritability, difficulty sleeping, heart palpitations, headaches, and constipation. In severe deficiency, cardiac arrhythmias can occur. For preparedness, stock magnesium glycinate capsules. Glycinate is the best absorbed and best tolerated form. Dose is 200 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium daily. Take it at bedtime for the added benefit of improved sleep quality. A 6-month supply costs $10 to $15. Potassium. Essential for heart function, muscle contraction, and fluid balance. Potassium deficiency, hypokalemia, causes muscle weakness, cramps, fatigue, and in severe cases, cardiac arrhythmias. The best grid-down source of supplemental potassium is potassium chloride, sold as no salt or new salt in every grocery store. It costs $2 to $3 for a container that will last months. Use it as a salt substitute on food and add it to your oral rehydration solution. Zinc. Essential for immune function, wound healing, and protein synthesis. Zinc deficiency impairs immune response, slows wound healing, and increases susceptibility to infection. In the context of an Ebola epidemic, anything that supports immune function is worth maintaining. Zinc gluconate or zinc picolinate capsules, 15 to 30 milligrams daily, are a reasonable addition to your supplement stockpile. Do not exceed 40 milligrams daily, as excess zinc interferes with copper absorption. Vitamin C. Essential for immune function, collagen synthesis, which is critical for wound healing, and antioxidant protection. In a crisis scenario with limited access to fresh fruits and vegetables, vitamin C deficiency can develop within weeks. Scurvy, the disease caused by severe vitamin C deficiency, causes bleeding gums, slow wound healing, joint pain, fatigue, and eventually death if not corrected. 500 to 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C daily from ascorbic acid tablets is a simple, cheap, and effective insurance policy against deficiency. A year's supply costs $5 to $10. My grid-down mineral supplementation protocol. Magnesium glycinate, 200 to 400 milligrams daily. Potassium chloride, 1/4 teaspoon daily in food or ORS. Zinc, 15 to 30 milligrams daily. Vitamin C, 500 to 1,000 milligrams daily. Vitamin D3, 2,000 to 5,000 IU daily. These 5 supplements cost less than $50 for a 6-month supply, and they address the most common nutritional deficiencies that will develop in a grid-down scenario where diet is limited to stored foods. Inside TPP, the Alternative Medicine for Preppers series covers 72 modules of grid-down pharmacy, supplement science, herbal protocols, and austere environment nutritional management. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me talk ammo. Prices shifted slightly this week because of the Iran deal optimism pushing oil down. But ammo prices lag oil prices by weeks, not days, so do not expect immediate relief at the ammo counter. 9mm. Brass-cased new manufacturer ball is running 18 to 21 cents per round in bulk online. Steel case is 13 to 15 cents. If you find brass under 18 from a reputable dealer, buy it. 556 NATO and 223 Remington. 29 to 36 cents per round for brass-cased new manufacturer. Under 30 cents is the buy signal. The Canadian tariff is adding upward pressure on aluminum and steel used in ammunition manufacturing, so do not expect these prices to drop even if oil moderates. 308 Winchester and 762 NATO. 57 to 72 cents per round. Match grade is $1 to $1.50. 12-gauge buckshot, double-aught. 75 cents to $1.10 per shell for quality defensive loads. 300 Winchester Magnum, $1.50 to $2.50 per round depending on the load. If you shoot the 300 Win Mag and you are not reloading, you are spending $3 to $5 every time you pull the trigger on match-grade ammunition. The 28-module operational long-range course inside TPP covers ammunition selection, load development, and the economics of precision rifle shooting in detail. 45 ACP, 30 to 40 cents per round for ball. Defensive hollow points, 60 to 80 cents. The takeaway is the same. Prices are stable but elevated. Stop waiting. Buy what you can afford. Store it properly. Cool, dry ammo cans, desiccant packs. Do an ammo inventory this episode. Every round by caliber, written down, compared to your minimum stockpile goal. 1,000 rounds of your primary, 500 of your secondary, 200 shotgun. If you are below minimum, set a monthly budget and stick to it. $50 a month at 20 cents a round is 250 rounds per month, 3,000 rounds in a year. Discipline beats panic buying. Now let me talk gear. This episode I want to cover something that should be in every prepper's home and that most people do not have. A pulse oximeter. A pulse oximeter is a small clip-on device that fits over your fingertip and measures two things: your blood oxygen saturation, called SpO2, and your heart rate. It costs between $15 and $30. It runs on a watch battery. It requires zero training to use, and it gives you clinical data that can be the difference between recognizing a medical emergency in time and missing it until it is too late. Normal SpO2 is between 95 and 100%. Below 94% in a person who is not at high altitude indicates hypoxemia, meaning their blood is not carrying enough oxygen. Below 90% is a medical emergency. Below 85%, organ damage begins. Why does this matter for preppers? Because in a grid-down scenario, you do not have access to arterial blood gases or chest x-rays. You cannot send someone to the ER for shortness of breath. The pulse oximeter gives you an objective number that tells you whether the shortness of breath is mild and manageable or severe and life-threatening. In the context of Ebola, respiratory complications can develop. In the context of pneumonia from any cause, SpO2 tells you if the lungs are working. In the context of heart failure, which I live with personally, SpO2 tells you if fluid is accumulating in the lungs before the gasping starts. In the context of smoke inhalation during a wildfire, SpO2 tells you if carbon monoxide is displacing oxygen. A $15 pulse oximeter on your nightstand gives you data that would cost hundreds of dollars in an emergency room. Buy one. Learn to read it. Normal is 95 to 100%. Below 94 is concern. Below 90 is emergency. For my fellow preppers who have family members with MS, COPD, asthma, heart failure, or any chronic respiratory or cardiac condition, a pulse oximeter is not optional gear. It is essential medical equipment. Check SpO2 daily. Log it. A downward trend over days, even while the person feels fine, can indicate a developing problem before symptoms become obvious. Inside TPP, the medical series, covers vital signs assessment, including pulse oximetry interpretation, clinical decision-making based on vital signs in austere environments, and the complete grid-down patient assessment framework. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Now let me talk about your home. This is the home security segment, and today I want to cover something I have not discussed before: the human factor, social engineering. Most people think of home security as locks, cameras, lights, and firearms. Those are the physical layer. They are essential. I covered them in previous episodes, and they remain your foundation. But there is a layer that most preppers never think about, and it is the one that professional criminals and sophisticated bad actors use most effectively: social engineering. Social engineering is the manipulation of human behavior to gain access, information, or trust. It is how con artists work. It is how identity thieves work. And in a crisis scenario, it is how dangerous people will approach your home, your supplies, and your family. Here are the scenarios you need to think about. The stranger who asks for help. In a grid-down scenario, someone knocks on your door. They look disheveled. They say they are out of water. They say their child is sick. They ask if you can help. Your instinct as a decent human being is to help. That instinct can get you killed. Most people think of home security as locks, cameras, lights, and firearms. Those are the physical layer. They are essential. I covered them in previous episodes, and they remain your foundation. But there is a layer that most preppers never think about, and it is the one that professional criminals and sophisticated bad actors use most effectively: social engineering. Social engineering is the manipulation of human behavior to gain access, information, or trust. It is how con artists work. It is how identity thieves work. And in a crisis scenario, it is how dangerous people will approach your home, your supplies, and your family. Here are the scenarios you need to think about. The stranger who asks for help. In a grid-down scenario, someone knocks on your door. They look disheveled. They say they are out of water. They say their child is sick. They ask if you can help. Your instinct as a decent human being is to help. That instinct can get you killed. I am not telling you to never help anyone. I am telling you to help from a position of security, not vulnerability. You do not open your door to a stranger during a crisis. You talk through the door. If you choose to provide water or supplies, you pass them out through a window or a secondary opening, not through your primary entry point. You keep your firearm accessible. You have a family member watching from a different vantage point. You do not let the stranger see the interior of your home, your supplies, or how many people are inside. The person who claims authority. In a crisis, someone shows up in a uniform or with a badge and tells you they need to inspect your home, confiscate supplies, or relocate your family. Do they have legitimate authority? Maybe, maybe not. In a genuine disaster, law enforcement and emergency management do have certain authorities, but so do criminals who put on a reflective vest and a clipboard. Know your rights. Know what local, state, and federal authorities can and cannot do during a declared emergency. Know what identification legitimate responders carry. Do not comply blindly with anyone who shows up at your door claiming authority without verification. And if something feels wrong, it probably is. The neighbor who suddenly wants to be your friend. Before the crisis, this neighbor never spoke to you. Now that the power is out and the grocery stores are empty, they are at your door wanting to know what supplies you have, how much food you stored, whether you have a generator, whether you have weapons. They are not becoming your friend. They are conducting reconnaissance. OPSEC applies to your neighbors as much as it applies to strangers. Do not discuss your supplies, your weapons, your medical stores, your fuel reserves, or your preparedness level with anyone outside your immediate trusted circle. The neighbor who knows you have 6 months of food and a generator is the neighbor who tells 10 other neighbors. And in a sustained crisis, that information becomes a targeting package. Your social engineering defense is simple. Be friendly, be vague, be prepared. Do not volunteer information. Do not display your preparations. Do not let strangers into your home during a crisis. And do not assume that everyone who looks harmless is harmless. 99% of people are genuinely decent. The 1% who are not look exactly the same until they do not. Let me talk about your vehicle. I'm going to go deeper on vehicle preparedness this episode because with the Iran deal in limbo and gas prices volatile, your vehicle is simultaneously your most expensive ongoing cost and your most critical evacuation asset. Fuel economy matters more right now than it has in years. If you are driving a truck or SUV, and many preppers do, including myself with the Jeep Gladiator, your fuel cost per mile is higher than someone in a sedan. At $80 a barrel and gas at $3.50 to $4 a gallon, every unnecessary trip burns money you could be spending on preps. Consolidate trips. If you need to go to the hardware store and the grocery store and the feed store, do all three in one trip, not 3 separate trips. Plan your route so you are not backtracking. This is basic logistics that the military teaches every convoy commander. Fuel discipline is not just about having a full tank. It is about using what is in that tank efficiently. Tire pressure. Underinflated tires increase rolling resistance and reduce fuel economy by 2 to 3% per 10 psi of underinflation. Check your tire pressure monthly. Keep it at the manufacturer's recommended psi printed on the sticker inside the driver's door jamb. A $3 tire gauge is a fuel economy tool. Air filter. A dirty air filter reduces engine efficiency. A clean air filter costs $10 to $20 and takes 5 minutes to replace. If you have not changed your air filter in the last year, do it this episode. Your vehicle emergency kit should include, and I am going to repeat this because repetition is how habits form, a first aid kit, a cat tourniquet, at least 1 gallon of water, a flashlight with spare batteries, jumper cables or a battery jump pack, a basic toolkit, a tire repair kit, a physical road map of your state, a tow strap, a wool blanket, and a fire extinguisher. If any of those items are missing from your vehicle right now, fix that before you drive to work tomorrow. The half-tank rule. When your gauge hits half, you fill. No exceptions. No waiting for the price to drop. No waiting until tomorrow. Half means fill. Today and every day. Let me talk communications. This episode I want to cover something specific. Programming your GMRS radio for local repeaters. If you followed my advice from previous episodes and applied for your GMRS license, $35, no test, covers your whole family, and you bought a mobile GMRS radio for your vehicle, you need to program it to access local repeaters. A repeater receives your signal on one frequency and retransmits it on another frequency at much higher power from a higher elevation. This extends your effective range from 5 to 15 miles on simplex to 50 miles or more through a repeater. Here is how to find repeaters in your area. Go to mygmrs.com. It is a free database of GMRS repeaters across the United States. Enter your location. The site will show you repeaters within range of your position, their frequencies, their PL tones, and their coverage areas. To program a repeater into your radio, you need 3 pieces of information. The repeater's output frequency, which is the frequency you program into your receive channel. The repeater's input frequency, which is the frequency your radio transmits on. And the PL tone, sometimes called CTCSS tone, which is a sub-audible tone your radio must transmit to access the repeater. Without the correct PL tone, the repeater ignores your transmission. Most GMRS repeaters operate on the 8 designated repeater channels, channels 15 through 22, with a 5 MHz offset between input and output. Your radio may have these pre-programmed with the correct offset. You just need to add the PL tone for your local repeater. Test the repeater by keying up briefly and listening for the courtesy tone or repeater identifier. If you hear it, you are connected. If you do not, verify your PL tone, your offset direction, and your power output. Programming repeaters takes 10 minutes, and it transforms your GMRS radio from a 5-mile walkie-talkie into a 50-mile communication system. Do it this episode. Inside TPP, the communication series covers GMRS, FRS, ham radio licensing, repeater programming, antenna theory, mesh-tastic mesh networking, and PACE communication planning. Over 30 modules. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me talk fitness. Same message, new angle. I am a man with preserved ejection fraction heart failure and a GFR barely above 20. My body fights me every day, and I still move. Because I understand something that most people do not internalize until it is too late. The body you have when the crisis starts is the body you fight with. You do not get a training montage. You do not get to level up. You get what you built before the crisis hit. If you cannot carry a 5-gallon water jug from your car to your kitchen, that is a problem that no amount of gear solves. If you cannot walk a mile with a loaded pack, your bug-out plan is fiction. If you cannot get off the ground without using your hands, you are vulnerable in any scenario that puts you on the ground, which is most of them. Today's exercise is a farmer's carry assessment. Here is what you do. Fill 2 1-gallon water jugs, 1 in each hand. Walk as far as you can before your grip gives out. Measure the distance. That is your baseline. Your goal is to increase that distance by 10% every 2 weeks. That is functional preparedness fitness. Carrying heavy things to where they need to go. Everything in a crisis is heavy. Water is heavy. Ammo is heavy. Food is heavy. Firewood is heavy. If you cannot carry it, you cannot use it. Walk 1 mile today. Not tomorrow. Today. Let me go deeper on a topic that matters enormously right now. Infection control in your home, not in a hospital, in your home. Because if Ebola reaches the United States, or if any serious infectious disease enters your community, the hospital is going to be overwhelmed within days. The overflow goes home. The people who cannot get a bed go home. The people who are exposed but not yet symptomatic go home. The people who are symptomatic but not sick enough for the limited hospital beds go home. Your home becomes the treatment facility whether you planned for it or not. Here is how you set up a home isolation room. Pick the room in your home that is most isolated from the rest of the living space. Ideally, it has its own bathroom or is adjacent to a bathroom that can be dedicated to the patient. It should have a door that closes. It should have a window that can be opened for ventilation. It should not share an HVAC duct with the rest of the house if possible, because air circulation can carry droplets from one room to another. Remove everything from the room that is not necessary. Extra furniture, decorations, rugs, curtains, anything with a porous surface that is difficult to decontaminate. Leave the bed, a hard surface nightstand, a chair for the caregiver, and nothing else. Line the mattress with a waterproof mattress protector. If you do not have one, a plastic shower curtain liner underneath the fitted sheet works. Bodily fluids from an Ebola patient will contaminate bedding. The waterproof barrier prevents the fluid from soaking into the mattress, which cannot be adequately decontaminated. Set up a waste station inside the room, a plastic-lined trash can with a lid for contaminated waste. Soiled linens, used PPE, tissues, anything that has contacted the patient's bodily fluids goes into this container. Double bag everything. The outer bag is handled with clean gloves only. Set up a decontamination station outside the door of the isolation room, a small table or shelf with a spray bottle of 1 to 9 bleach solution, clean gloves, hand sanitizer, and a trash bag for the caregiver's used outer gloves and gown. The caregiver dons PPE before entering the room. The caregiver doffs PPE at the decontamination station when exiting. Nothing worn inside the room enters the rest of the house. The caregiver's PPE for each entry into the isolation room: N95 respirator, goggles or face shield, fluid-resistant gown, 2 pairs of nitrile gloves, inner pair under the gown cuffs, outer pair over the gown cuffs. Shoe covers or dedicated shoes that stay at the decontamination station and are sprayed with bleach solution after each exit. Doffing sequence. This is where contamination transfer happens. Memorize this order. Outer gloves off first, peeled away from the hands without touching the outer surface with bare skin. Gown off next, untied and rolled inside out away from the body. Goggles or face shield off next, handled by the headband or earpieces only, not the lens. N95 off next, removed by the straps without touching the front of the respirator. Inner gloves off last. Hand hygiene with soap and water or hand sanitizer between every step. Every step. Practice this sequence now, before you need it. Have your designated caregiver practice it 10 times, until it is automatic, until the hands know the order without thinking. Because when you are exhausted, scared, and standing outside a room where someone you love is vomiting blood, the only thing that protects you is the procedure you practice so many times that it runs itself. Ventilation. If the isolation room has a window, open it. If you have a box fan, place it in the window pointing outward to create negative pressure in the room, pulling air from the hallway through the door gap, across the room, and out the window. This is an improvised negative pressure setup that reduces the risk of airborne particles, if any, moving from the isolation room into the rest of the house. It is not a hospital-grade negative pressure room. It is better than nothing. Laundry from the isolation room. Soiled linens and clothing are handled with gloves and placed directly into a plastic bag inside the isolation room. The bag is sealed and transported to the washing machine. Wash on the hottest setting available with bleach. Do not shake or sort contaminated laundry. Handle it as little as possible. The person who handles the laundry wears gloves and washes their hands immediately after loading the machine. Dishes and utensils. Use disposable plates, cups, and utensils if possible. If not possible, the patient's dishes are washed separately in hot soapy water with a cap full of bleach added to the wash water. The person who washes the dishes wears gloves. Duration. Ebola patients are contagious from the onset of symptoms until the virus is cleared from all bodily fluids. This can take weeks. Even after clinical recovery, the virus can persist in semen for months. The isolation period for a confirmed or suspected Ebola patient is a minimum of 21 days after symptom onset, or until the patient has been fever-free without medication for 72 hours and all symptoms have resolved, whichever is longer. In a grid-down scenario without the ability to test for viral clearance, err on the side of longer isolation. This is hard. This is isolating a family member in a room in your home for weeks. It is psychologically brutal for the patient and for the family. Provide communication through the door. A baby monitor or walkie-talkie allows the patient to communicate without the caregiver entering the room for non-essential contact. Books, a tablet with downloaded content, a radio, anything that provides stimulation and connection reduces the psychological toll. This is the reality of home-based infectious disease management. It is not glamorous. It is not exciting. It is tedious, frightening, and exhausting. But it is the protocol that keeps the rest of your household alive while caring for the person who is sick. Inside TPP, the Grid Down Medicine series, and the Pandemic Preparedness modules cover home isolation setup, decontamination protocols, PPE selection and doffing procedures, and the complete infectious disease management framework for austere environments. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me go deeper on a rotating topic that I have not covered in depth on this show yet: night operations. Specifically, how to function effectively in complete darkness during a grid down scenario. When the power goes out, most people are functionally blind. They stumble around their own homes. They cannot find supplies. They cannot navigate their property, and they are vulnerable to anyone who can see in the dark. Night operations capability is a force multiplier that most preppers ignore because they assume they will always have a flashlight. Your flashlight batteries die. Your rechargeable flashlight runs out of charge when the solar panel is covered by clouds for 3 days. Your headlamp strap breaks. Every light source you own is finite. The darkness is not. Here is how to build night operations capability without night vision equipment, which is covered in a separate module inside TPP. Dark adaptation. Your eyes have 2 types of photoreceptor cells: cones, which provide color vision and work in bright light, and rods, which provide black and white vision and work in low light. Dark adaptation is the process by which your eyes shift from cone-dominant vision to rod-dominant vision. It takes approximately 20 to 30 minutes of darkness for your rods to reach full sensitivity. During those 30 minutes, your vision progressively improves as the rhodopsin pigment in your rod cells regenerates. The practical implication is that if you turn on a bright light in the middle of the night, you destroy your dark adaptation instantly, and it takes another 20 to 30 minutes to get it back. Every time you check your phone, turn on a flashlight, or light a candle, you reset the clock. This is why military personnel use red light headlamps and red filtered flashlights for night operations. Red light does not significantly affect rod cell rhodopsin, so your dark adaptation is preserved. Buy a headlamp with a red light mode. Every prepper should own one. Use the red light mode for all nighttime activities inside your home during a blackout. Reserve the white light mode for tasks that absolutely require it, such as medical treatment or detailed mechanical work. Your eyes will thank you, and your ability to see in the dark will be dramatically better than the person who keeps flashing their phone screen. Navigation in your own home. Practice navigating your home in complete darkness. Turn off every light. Close every curtain. Walk through your home from the bedroom to the kitchen, to the medical kit, to the gun safe, to the front door, to the back door. Do it 5 times. Memorize the layout by feel. Count your steps. Know where the furniture is. Know where the doorways are. Know where the stairs are. In a true blackout, with no streetlights, no neighbor's porch light, no moonlight on a cloudy night, the inside of your home is absolute darkness. If you have never experienced absolute darkness in your own home, you do not know how disorienting it is. The walls you walk past every day disappear. The doorways you step through without thinking become invisible. The stairs become a fall hazard. Practice now, 5 times through the house in the dark. It takes 15 minutes and it could prevent a broken hip or a missed threat. Property navigation. Walk your property at night, not with a flashlight, in the dark. Know where the fence line is. Know where the gate is. Know where the trip hazards are, the garden hose, the kid's bike, the dog bowl on the patio. Know where your sight lines are. Know where the dead spots are where someone could approach without being seen. This is the same perimeter awareness that I do during daylight, applied to darkness. If you have motion-activated lights on your property, which I recommended in a previous episode, understand that those lights help you and they help an intruder. The light illuminates the intruder, but it also destroys your dark adaptation and reveals your position if you are watching from a window. Position yourself away from windows when observing a motion-activated light event. Use the indirect light to assess the situation without putting yourself in the light. Sound discipline. In darkness, sound becomes your primary threat detection system. Your ears do what your eyes cannot. Learn to listen for anomalies. The normal sounds of your property at night, the HVAC system, the refrigerator compressor, the neighbor's dog, become your baseline. Anything outside that baseline warrants attention. Footsteps on gravel, a gate latch clicking, glass breaking, a car door in the driveway when no car should be there. In a grid-down scenario with no ambient noise from electronics, your hearing range increases dramatically. Use it. Move slowly. Move quietly. Do not slam doors. Do not drag your feet. Step heel to toe on hard surfaces to minimize noise. If you need to move through your home at night without alerting anyone inside or outside, practice the slow, deliberate, silent movement that infantry soldiers use during night patrols. Wait on the back foot. Test the front foot for obstacles and noise-producing surfaces before transferring weight. It is slow, it is deliberate, and it is invisible. Inside TPP, the Night Vision and Thermal Optics course covers equipment selection, PVS-14 operation, thermal imaging, night movement techniques, and the complete night operations framework. The course pairs with the SOG series on community defense and the home security modules. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me talk about gardening, because we are in the critical window for fall garden planning, and most of you in the central and southern United States have summer gardens that are struggling under the August heat. Your summer tomatoes are probably done producing or nearly done. Peppers may still be going if you kept them watered. Squash is likely finished, or fighting vine borers. Beans may have stopped setting pods in the heat. This is normal. This is August. The summer garden winds down and the fall garden takes over. Here is what you should be starting right now for fall production. Brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and kale. These are cold season crops that thrive in the cooler temperatures of September through November. Start seeds indoors or in a shaded area now. Transplant into the garden in mid to late August when temperatures begin to moderate. Brassicas tolerate light frost and actually taste better after a frost event because the cold converts starches to sugars in the leaves. Leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, arugula, and Swiss chard. Direct sow these in the garden in late August through September. They grow fast, some varieties producing harvestable leaves in 30 to 45 days. Succession plant every 2 weeks for continuous harvest through the fall. Root vegetables, carrots, beets, turnips, and radishes. Direct sow now through early September. Root vegetables store well in the ground, in root cellars, or in sand-filled containers in a cool location. Turnips and radishes mature in 30 to 60 days. Carrots and beets take 60 to 80 days. Garlic. Plant garlic cloves in October for harvest the following June or July. Garlic is one of the highest value crops you can grow. A single bulb produces 6 to 10 cloves. Each clove produces a new bulb. A 50-cent head of garlic from the grocery store can produce 5 to 10 new heads in 7 months. Plant the largest cloves from the healthiest bulbs you can find. Hardneck varieties are better for cold climates. Softneck varieties store longer and are better for braiding. Cover crops. If you have garden beds that will be empty through the winter, plant a cover crop. Crimson clover, winter rye, or Austrian winter peas. These crops protect the soil from erosion, suppress weeds, and fix nitrogen into the soil that your spring garden will use. Crimson clover is particularly valuable because it is a nitrogen fixer that also produces flowers that attract pollinators in early spring before your main crops are planted. Composting. If you are not composting, start. Every food scrap, every grass clipping, every fallen leaf is a potential input for your garden soil. Hot composting, where the pile reaches 130 to 150 degrees internally, kills weed seeds and pathogens and produces finished compost in 4 to 6 weeks. You need a carbon to nitrogen ratio of approximately 30 to 1. Carbon sources include dried leaves, straw, and cardboard. Nitrogen sources include food scraps, fresh grass clippings, and coffee grounds. Turn the pile every 3 to 5 days. Keep it moist but not waterlogged. Temperature tells you if the pile is working. If it is hot in the center, the microbes are doing their job. The food you grow is food you do not have to buy at $6.82 a pound. It is food that is not subject to supply chain disruption. It is food that is not affected by tariffs or strait closures or fertilizer price increases. Your garden is the most direct form of food security available to you. Use it. Inside TPP, the homesteading modules cover garden planning, soil building, composting, season extension, food preservation, seed saving, and the complete small-scale food production system. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me cover one more rotating topic before I move to the closing segments. Legal preparedness. Specifically, what you need to know about using force in defense of your home during a crisis scenario. I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is awareness and education. Consult a licensed attorney in your state for specific legal guidance. The legal framework for using force in defense of your home varies significantly by state. There are three main doctrines you need to understand. Castle Doctrine. Most states have some version of Castle Doctrine, which provides legal protection for using force, including deadly force, to defend yourself inside your home against an intruder. The specifics vary. Some states require you to reasonably believe the intruder intends to commit a felony or cause serious bodily harm. Some states presume the intent if someone enters your home unlawfully, meaning you do not have to prove what the intruder planned to do. The fact that they entered unlawfully is sufficient. Indiana, where many of my listeners are located, has a strong Castle Doctrine statute. Under Indiana Code 35-41-3-2, a person is justified in using reasonable force, including deadly force, to prevent or terminate the other person's unlawful entry of or attack on the person's dwelling, curtilage, or occupied motor vehicle. Stand your ground. Stand your ground laws extend Castle Doctrine beyond the home. In a stand your ground state, you have no duty to retreat before using force in self-defense in any place you have a legal right to be. Indiana is a stand your ground state. Kentucky is a stand your ground state. If you are in either state and you are legally present, you have no legal obligation to retreat before defending yourself with reasonable force, including deadly force, if you reasonably believe it is necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death. Duty to retreat. Some states require you to retreat from a confrontation before using force, if retreat is safely possible. This does not apply inside your home in any state that I am aware of, but it can apply in public spaces in states without stand your ground laws. If you travel to a duty to retreat state, your Indiana or Kentucky stand your ground right does not travel with you. Know the law in every state you enter. In a crisis scenario, civil unrest, a prolonged blackout, or a sustained grid-down event, the legal framework does not change. Self-defense law still applies. You do not get a free pass to use force during a crisis. The standard is still reasonable belief of imminent serious bodily harm or death. Shooting a looter who is stealing from your garage is not the same as shooting an intruder who is breaking into your occupied home with a weapon. The first may land you in prison. The second is likely justified under Castle Doctrine. Document everything. If you are ever involved in a defensive use of force, call 911 immediately. State that you are in fear for your life. State that you will cooperate fully but want to speak with an attorney before providing a detailed statement. Do not provide a detailed narrative to responding officers without legal counsel. Your adrenaline is spiking. Your memory is unreliable in the immediate aftermath. Your words will be recorded and used. Get a lawyer. Consider prepaid legal defense coverage. USCCA and US Law Shield both offer plans that provide legal defense coverage for self-defense incidents. The cost is roughly $20 to $40 per month, depending on the plan. In a legitimate self-defense situation, your legal costs will exceed $100,000, even if you are ultimately found justified. Legal defense coverage is as much a preparedness tool as the firearm itself. Know the law in your state. Know the law in every state you travel to. Carry your concealed carry permit even in constitutional carry states for the reciprocity benefit. And understand that the legal consequences of using force do not pause during a crisis. The law applies in the dark the same way it applies in the daylight. Inside TPP, the legal modules cover use of force law, Castle Doctrine by state, concealed carry reciprocity, ATF regulatory compliance, and the complete legal framework for armed preparedness. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me go deep on a topic I've been wanting to cover on this show for a while: bug-out bag philosophy. Not what to put in the bag, I will cover that, but why most bug-out bags fail before they are ever used and how to fix yours. I have seen hundreds of bug-out bags at ranges, at preparedness expos, on YouTube, in the comment sections of my videos, and I can tell you that 80% of them share the same fatal flaw. They are too heavy. The average bug-out bag I see weighs 40 to 50 pounds. Some are heavier. I have seen 60 and 70-pound bags proudly displayed by preppers who have never carried them farther than the trunk of their car to their front door. And I want to ask every one of them the same question. Have you ever carried that bag for 10 miles? Because that is the test. Not whether you can lift it, not whether it looks impressive sitting on a shelf. Can you carry it for 10 miles over mixed terrain at a sustainable pace without breaking down? I have carried heavy loads in combat, in Desert Storm, in Afghanistan. I have done it in 100-degree heat, and I have done it at altitude. And I can tell you that load management is one of the most critical skills in military operations, and it is the one that civilian preppers get wrong more than any other. The military standard for a sustained march load is approximately 30% of the soldier's body weight. For a 200-pound soldier, that is 60 pounds. For a 150-pound person, that is 45 pounds. And those are soldiers who train with heavy loads regularly, who ruck weekly, who have the conditioning and the musculoskeletal adaptation that comes from months and years of load-bearing exercise. If you are a civilian prepper who does not ruck regularly, your sustainable load is lower, probably 20 to 25% of your body weight for a sustained carry. For a 170-pound person, that is 34 to 42 pounds. Everything in your bag, including the bag itself, including water, including any weapons or ammunition carried in or on the bag. Here's how to audit your bug-out bag for weight. Step 1. Take everything out. Everything. Dump it on the floor. Step 2. Weigh every item individually on a kitchen scale. Write the weight next to each item on a piece of paper. Step 3. Sort the items into 3 categories: survival essentials, comfort items, aspirational items. Survival essentials are the things you will die without: water, water purification, shelter from the elements, a way to make fire, a cutting tool, basic medical supplies, and navigation. Comfort items are the things that make survival more tolerable, but will not kill you if they are absent. Extra clothing layers beyond the minimum, food beyond 72 hours, toiletries, entertainment. Aspirational items are the things you packed because they seem like good ideas, but you have never used and probably will not need. The 5th knife, the 3-pound camp axe, the fishing kit you have never used, the 50 feet of paracord beyond the first 20 feet. Step 4. Pack only the survival essentials. Weigh the bag. That is your minimum. Now add comfort items one at a time, weighing after each addition until you hit your target weight. Every item after that stays home. No exceptions. No, but what if I need it? If it does not fit within the weight budget, it does not go. Step 5. Put the bag on your back and walk 5 miles. Not on a treadmill, outside, on terrain, with the weight. Time yourself. Assess how you feel at mile 1, mile 3, and mile 5. If you are struggling at mile 3, your bag is too heavy, or your conditioning is inadequate. Fix one or both. The core contents of a properly built 72-hour bug-out bag should weigh between 25 and 35 pounds, depending on your body weight and conditioning. Here is my loadout. Water. 1 liter of water carried, approximately 2.2 pounds. Water purification tablets or a Sawyer mini filter, approximately 2 to 3 ounces. You carry 1 liter and the ability to make more. You do not carry 3 days of water because 3 days of water for one person is approximately 6 liters, which is over 13 pounds. That is unsustainable. Shelter. A lightweight tarp or emergency bivvy, not a tent. A tent weighs 3 to 6 pounds. A quality lightweight tarp weighs 8 to 16 ounces. A Sawwell emergency bivvy weighs 7 ounces. Paired with 100 feet of bank line for rigging the tarp, you have a complete shelter system for under 2 pounds. Fire. A ferro rod and striker. A Bic lighter as backup. Cotton balls with petroleum jelly as tinder. Total weight approximately 4 ounces. Fire gives you warmth, water purification through boiling, signaling capability, and morale. It weighs almost nothing. There is no excuse not to carry redundant fire starting capability. Cutting tool. 1 fixed blade knife. 4 to 5 inch blade. Full tang. Quality steel. Total weight approximately 8 to 12 ounces depending on the knife. This is your most versatile tool. It processes wood, prepares food, cuts cordage, serves as a prying tool in an emergency, and in a worst case serves as a weapon. Medical. A compact trauma kit, 1 CAT tourniquet, 1 pack of hemostatic gauze, 1 chest seal, 1 pressure bandage, 1 NPA, tape, gloves. This is not your full IFAK. This is the minimum life-saving medical equipment for a carry situation. Total weight approximately 1 to 1.5 pounds. Navigation. A compass and a physical map of your region. Your phone is not navigation when the cell network is down and the battery is dead. A compass weighs 2 ounces. A laminated map weighs 2 ounces. 4 ounces total gives you the ability to navigate anywhere your map covers indefinitely without batteries. Food. Calorie-dense, lightweight, no-cook food for 72 hours. Peanut butter packets, energy bars, beef jerky, dried fruit and nuts, trail mix. 2,000 calories per day for 3 days is 6,000 calories. At approximately 125 calories per ounce for calorie-dense foods, that is approximately 48 ounces or 3 pounds of food. You are not cooking gourmet meals. You are fueling your body to keep moving. Clothing. 1 additional layer beyond what you are wearing. A lightweight fleece or insulating mid-layer. Rain protection. A lightweight poncho or rain jacket. A hat, gloves if the season warrants, extra socks because your feet are your transportation and wet feet become blistered feet, become immobile feet. Total weight for additional clothing, approximately 2 to 3 pounds depending on the season. Communications, a handheld GMRS radio, weighs approximately 8 to 12 ounces with batteries. This is your lifeline to your family and your community when cell networks are down. Illumination, a headlamp with red light mode, weighs approximately 3 to 4 ounces with batteries. Spare batteries weigh approximately 2 ounces. Documents, copies of identification, insurance cards, medical information, emergency contacts, prescriptions, and any legal documents you may need. Sealed in a waterproof bag. Weighs ounces but is irreplaceable if you are displaced. Cash, small bills, 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s. ATMs do not work without power. Credit card readers do not work without internet. Cash works everywhere, always. $200 to $500 in small bills in a waterproof bag. Total weight for the loadout I just described, approximately 20 to 28 pounds, depending on specific product choices and season. That leaves 5 to 15 pounds of weight budget for personal items. Additional ammunition if you are carrying a firearm, prescription medications, or comfort items. The bag itself. An external frame pack distributes weight better than an internal frame for heavy loads. An internal frame pack is more streamlined and better for moving through brush or tight spaces. For a 30-pound bug-out bag, either works. Choose a pack with a padded hip belt because the hip belt transfers 60 to 70% of the load from your shoulders to your hips. Without a hip belt, all the weight sits on your shoulders and upper back, and you will be in pain within 2 miles. The single biggest mistake I see in bug-out bags: no hip belt. A $50 pack with a proper hip belt carries better than a $300 pack without one. Inside TPP, the bug-out bag module covers loadout selection, weight management, pack fitting, seasonal adjustments, and the complete 72-hour displacement kit. The vehicle emergency kit module covers the parallel system for your vehicle, and the 3-location deployment strategy covers how to stage medical, communication, and survival equipment across on-body, vehicle, and home station positions so you are never more than an arm's reach from critical gear. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Your bug-out bag action item this episode. Take everything out of your bug-out bag, weigh every item, calculate the total. If it is over 35 pounds, start cutting. If you have never carried it farther than your car, put it on and walk 1 mile today. Your bag is only as good as your ability to carry it. Let me talk about a topic that connects preparedness to everyday life in a way that most shows do not cover. Financial preparedness beyond precious metals and barter goods. Specifically, debt elimination as a survival strategy. Every dollar you pay in interest to a credit card company, a car loan, or a mortgage is a dollar that is not buying rice, ammunition, medical supplies, or fuel. Debt is a vulnerability. It is a monthly payment that persists regardless regardless of whether the economy is stable or collapsing. In a crisis, your income may be disrupted, your hours may be cut, your business may close, but your debt payments do not stop. The credit card company does not care that the grid is down. The bank does not care that gas is $4 a gallon. They want their payment. The prepper who is debt-free has options. The prepper who is carrying $20,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest is paying $4,000 a year in interest alone. That $4,000 could buy 400 pounds of rice, 10,000 rounds of 9mm, a complete solar power setup, or a year of medication stockpiled. Instead, it is going to a bank that would not lend you a glass of water in a collapse. Here is the debt elimination strategy I recommend. Step 1. List every debt you have. Credit cards, car loans, personal loans, student loans, medical bills. Write down the balance, the interest rate, and the minimum payment for each. Step 2. The avalanche method. Pay minimum payments on everything except the debt with the highest interest rate. Throw every extra dollar at the highest interest debt until it is paid off. Then move to the next highest. This method saves the most money and interest over time. Alternatively, the snowball method. Pay minimum payments on everything except the smallest balance. Pay that off first for the psychological win of eliminating a debt completely. Then move to the next smallest. This method builds momentum through small victories. Either method works. Pick the one that matches your personality. Step 3. Stop adding new debt. Cut the credit cards if you have to. Live on cash. If you cannot afford it without a credit card, you cannot afford it. The exception is a medical emergency, which is why your emergency fund and your medical preps exist. Step 4. Build a $1,000 emergency fund before aggressive debt payoff. This prevents you from going back into debt for an unexpected car repair or medical bill. $1,000 in a savings account is not an investment. It is a buffer between you and new debt. Step 5. Once debt-free, redirect all former debt payments into preparedness. The $300 a month you were paying on credit cards becomes $300 a month in food storage, medical supplies, fuel, ammunition, and precious metals. In 1 year, that is $3,600 of preps funded entirely by money that used to go to a bank. Debt-free is a prep. It is not the sexiest prep. It does not look impressive on Instagram. But the prepper who owes nobody anything is the prepper who can weather an economic disruption without losing everything. Your financial action item this episode. List every debt you owe. Calculate the total. Calculate the total monthly interest you are paying. That interest number is the cost of not being prepared. Start attacking it. Let me talk about one more topic that I think is critical and underserved in the preparedness space. Teaching children real skills, not survival fantasy, real skills. I talked about my daughter Giannina in a previous segment. She is 9. She plays Roblox and loves Michael Jackson and draws beautiful pictures. She is a kid. But she is also learning skills that will serve her for the rest of her life. Not because I sit her down and lecture her about the collapse, but because I build skills into our time together naturally. Here is my philosophy. Children do not need to know about the threats. They do not need to hear about Ebola case counts or Iran war updates or food price inflation. That is adult weight, and it does not belong on their shoulders. What they need is competence. The confidence that comes from knowing how to do things, how to start a fire, how to swim, how to cook a basic meal, how to read a map, how to use a tool, how to call for help, how to be useful. A child who can cook scrambled eggs at age 8 can feed themselves and their siblings during a power outage while you are handling something else. A child who can start a fire at age 10 can provide warmth and light when the heat goes out. A child who can read a compass at age 11 can help navigate if you are displaced. A child who knows basic first aid at age 12 can apply direct pressure to a wound while you call for help. These are not scary skills. They are empowering skills. The child who can do these things is not afraid of the dark. They are the one who finds the flashlight. Here are the skills I recommend teaching by age. Age 5 to 7. How to call 911. How to state their name, their address, and the nature of the emergency. How to unlock a phone. Basic water safety. How to swim, or at minimum, how to float on their back. How to recognize dangerous animals and plants in your area. How to find and use a flashlight. Age 8 to 10. How to start a fire with a match and with a ferro rod under supervision. How to cook 3 basic meals, scrambled eggs, pasta, and rice. How to purify water by boiling. How to use a basic hand tool, a hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench. How to read a thermometer. How to take a pulse. How to tie 3 basic knots, a bowline, a clove hitch, and a trucker's hitch. Age 11 to 13. How to use a compass and read a topographic map. How to apply a tourniquet. How to perform CPR. How to identify edible plants in your region. How to safely handle a firearm under direct supervision. How to change a tire. How to start and operate a generator. Age 14 and up. All of the above at proficiency level, plus defensive shooting fundamentals, advanced first aid, radio communications, land navigation, and leadership under stress. These skills are not taught in school. They are not taught on social media. They are taught by parents who care enough to take the time. 15 minutes a week, 1 skill at a time, repeated until it is automatic. The most important prep you can give your child is not a bug-out bag. It is the confidence that comes from knowing they can handle hard things. Build that confidence 1 skill at a time. Your family action item this episode. Pick 1 skill from the list appropriate to your child's age. Teach it this weekend. Not a lecture, a hands-on practice session. 15 minutes. You will be amazed at how quickly they learn and how proud they are of themselves. Now let me talk about something that gets no airtime in the preparedness world, but matters enormously. Your relationship with your spouse or partner during a crisis. Crisis amplifies everything. If your relationship is strong, the crisis will make it stronger because you will work together, communicate, and support each other. If your relationship has cracks, the crisis will blow them wide open because stress, fear, sleep deprivation, and the constant pressure of survival decisions will exploit every weakness. I am not a marriage counselor. I am a combat veteran who has watched marriages survive deployments and watched marriages fail under the same pressure. The ones that survived had 3 things in common. Communication. Not talking at each other, talking with each other, sharing the plan, sharing the fears, sharing the decisions. The spouse who is left out of the preparedness planning feels controlled, not protected. Include them. Ask their opinion. Incorporate their priorities. Even if you disagree on the tactical details, the act of including them builds trust and ownership. Division of labor. Clear roles reduce conflict. If both of you are trying to make the same decisions, you will fight. If each of you has defined responsibilities, you function as a team. One person handles food and water, the other handles security and communications. One person manages the children, the other manages the medical kit. Divide the labor before the crisis. Practice it. The time to figure out who does what is not when the lights go out. Grace. You are both going to make mistakes. You are both going to lose patience. You are both going to have moments where you want to quit, where you want to scream, where you want to blame the other person for something that is not their fault. Those moments are coming. Decide now, in advance, that you will extend grace when they happen, because they will happen. And the relationship that survives a crisis is the one where both people decided in advance to forgive the bad moments and focus on the mission. Your relationship action item this episode. Sit down with your spouse or partner, not during a stressful moment, during a calm moment, and say this. If something happens and we are on our own, I want us to be a team. What do you need from me to feel safe? Then listen. Do not correct. Do not lecture. Listen. Their answer is your roadmap. Let me cover the canine segment for this episode, your dogs in a crisis. With August heat at its peak across most of the country, canine heat casualties are the most likely veterinary emergency you will face right now. I covered the basics in a previous episode. Here, I want to go deeper on one specific topic: how to cool an overheated dog when you do not have a vet and you do not have air conditioning. Signs of heat stroke in dogs. Excessive panting that does not slow down with rest. Bright red gums and tongue. Drooling, thick, ropey saliva. Staggering or inability to stand. Vomiting, diarrhea, glazed eyes, collapse, seizures. A rectal temperature above 104 degrees Fahrenheit is heat exhaustion. Above 106 degrees is heat stroke and is a life-threatening emergency. Cooling protocol. Move the dog to shade immediately. Apply cool water, not ice water, to the belly, the paw pads, the groin, and the armpits. These are the areas where blood vessels run closest to the surface. Ice water causes peripheral blood vessels to constrict, which actually traps heat in the core. Use cool water, not cold. Wet the ears with cool water. Fan the dog with anything available to promote evaporative cooling. Offer small amounts of cool water to drink. Do not force water. If you have a rectal thermometer, monitor temperature every 5 minutes. Stop active cooling when the temperature reaches 103 degrees. The body will continue to cool on its own, and you do not want to overcool into hypothermia. In a grid-down scenario without a vet, you may need to administer subcutaneous fluids to a severely dehydrated dog. This is a technique your vet can teach you in advance using a bag of lactated Ringer's solution, an administration set, and a large bore needle inserted under the skin between the shoulder blades. It is a common at-home treatment for pets with kidney disease, and your vet can show you how to do it in a 10-minute office visit. Ask at your next vet appointment. Prevention. Do not walk your dogs on hot pavement. If you cannot hold the back of your hand on the pavement for 5 seconds, it is too hot for their paws. Walk early morning or late evening only. Provide shade and water at all times. Never leave a dog in a vehicle. Never. The interior of a car reaches 120 degrees within minutes on a warm day. Your dogs are family. Treat their heat safety with the same urgency you treat your family's. Inside TPP, the Canine Complete Medical Reference covers heat casualties, wound care, bloat, poisoning, field surgery, and over 60 parts of comprehensive grid-down veterinary medicine. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me go deep on a topic that is directly relevant to this audience: PACE planning. I introduced this in episode 1, but I want to give it a full treatment today because PACE planning is the single most powerful planning framework in military operations, and most civilian preppers have never built one. PACE stands for Primary, Alternate, Contingency, Emergency. It comes from military communications planning, but it applies to every critical function in your life. The concept is simple. For every critical system you depend on, you need 4 layers of capability. When the primary fails, you go to the alternate. When the alternate fails, you go to the contingency. When the contingency fails, you go to the emergency. You never reach a point where you have no option because you planned 4 layers deep. Let me build a complete PACE plan for every critical function in your household right now. Get a piece of paper, write these down, put them on your refrigerator when we are done. Communication PACE. Primary, cell phone. This is what works 99% of the time. Voice calls, text messages, group chats. Your family is already using this daily. The weakness is that cell networks fail during crises. Towers lose power, circuits overload, networks are deliberately shut down during civil unrest in some countries. Alternate, GMRS radio. Your family GMRS radios give you voice communication independent of the cell network. 5 to 15 miles on simplex, 50 miles or more through repeaters. No internet required, no cell tower required. $35 license, no test, covers your whole family. If you do not have GMRS radios, this is the gap in your communication PACE that needs to be filled first. Contingency, Mesh-tastic mesh networking, encrypted text messaging over LoRa radio modules, no license required for low-power operations, no internet, no cell network, $30 to $60 per node, 3 to 5 nodes cover your immediate family. Range extends with every additional node in the mesh. This layer gives you encrypted text communication when both cell and GMRS are unavailable. Emergency, physical runner. A family member or trusted neighbor physically travels between locations to deliver a message. This is the slowest and most dangerous option, but it works when everything electronic has failed. Pre-designate runner routes between your home, your bug-out location, and the homes of your mutual aid network members. Know the distance, know the terrain, know the checkpoints. Test your communication PACE. Today, have every family member turn off their cell phone and communicate using only the alternate layer for 1 hour. Next week, test the contingency layer. The system you have not tested is the system that will fail when you need it. Water PACE. Primary, municipal water supply. Turn on the tap. Water comes out. This is what works until it does not. Alternate, stored water. Your 55-gallon drums, your water bricks, your commercially bottled water. This is your immediate buffer when the municipal supply fails. At 2 gallons per person per day, calculate how many days your stored water covers your household. That number is your window. Contingency, water purification from natural sources, your gravity-fed filter, your purification tablets, your ability to boil. This layer requires access to a natural water source, a creek, a pond, a river, rainwater, and the equipment to make it safe. Know where your nearest natural water source is. Know the distance. Know the route. Emergency, Rainwater collection, your roof, your gutters, and a collection container. In most regions, a single rainstorm can fill a 55-gallon drum from a standard residential roof. This is your renewable source when stored water is depleted and natural sources are inaccessible. If you do not have a rain barrel, buy one, $50 to $100. It sits under a downspout and fills automatically. Power pace, primary, grid power, the electrical utility. This is what powers your home 99.9% of the time. When it fails, you go to alternate. Alternate, generator, gasoline, propane, or dual fuel. This gives you full power capability for as long as you have fuel. Your stored 25 gallons of treated gasoline gives you approximately 2 to 5 days of generator runtime depending on load. Propane gives you longer runtime with less maintenance and longer shelf life. Contingency, solar with battery storage. A portable solar panel system with a battery bank gives you renewable power that does not depend on fuel. It is weather dependent and lower output than a generator, but it runs indefinitely as long as the sun rises. A quality portable solar setup with a battery bank costs $300 to $800 depending on capacity. Emergency, manual and passive. Hand crank devices for radios and flashlights. Candles and oil lamps for light. Passive solar heating through south-facing windows. A wood stove for heating and cooking. This is the zero technology layer that works when everything with a battery or an engine has failed. Food pace, primary, grocery store. This is where 95% of Americans get 100% of their food. It works until the supply chain fails. Alternate, stored food. Your rice, beans, canned meats, freeze-dried meals, and pantry reserves. At 2,000 calories per person per day, calculate how many days your stored food covers your household. 30 days is the minimum. 90 days is the goal. 1 year is ideal. Contingency, home food production, your garden, your chickens, your fruit trees, your preserved harvest. This layer takes months to years to develop, but it is renewable and not dependent on any supply chain. Start now if you have not started. Emergency, foraging, hunting, fishing, and trapping. This is the last layer. It requires knowledge, skill, and access to wild resources. It is also the least reliable and most labor-intensive source of calories. Do not plan on this as a primary food source. Plan on it as the layer that supplements your other layers when they are stressed. Movement pace, primary, personal vehicle, your truck, your SUV, your car. Fuel dependent but fast and carries your family and supplies. Alternate, bicycle, fuel independent, covers 10 to 20 miles per hour depending on terrain and fitness, carries limited supplies in panniers or a trailer. Silent, low profile. Contingency, on foot with gear, your bug-out bag on your back. 2 to 3 miles per hour, limited range, high fatigue, but it works on any terrain and requires no fuel. Emergency, on foot with nothing. You left with the clothes on your back, no gear, no supplies. This is the scenario nobody wants to face, but everyone should plan for. What do you do with nothing? You find water, you find shelter, you find people, in that order. Medical pace, primary, the healthcare system, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, EMS. This is what works when civilization is functioning. Alternate, your home medical capability, your IFAK, your extended medical kit, your stockpiled medications, your wound care supplies, your ORS ingredients. This is what you use when the hospital is overwhelmed, unreachable, or non-existent. Contingency, your alternative medicine stockpile, your manuka honey, your colloidal silver, your oregano oil, your curcumin, your herbal protocols. This is what you use when pharmaceutical medications are exhausted. Emergency, improvised medicine, boiled cloth for bandages, spider web for wound closure, which actually has coagulant properties, willow bark tea for pain relief, which contains salicin, the precursor to aspirin, honey from any source for wound care, clean water and pressure for hemorrhage control. This is medicine stripped to its most primitive level. It is better than nothing, but only barely. Security, pace, primary, law enforcement, the police, the sheriff, the response you get when you call 911. This works when the system is functioning and response times are measured in minutes. Alternate, personal defense, your firearms, your training, your home fortification. This is your capability when law enforcement is unavailable or response times are measured in hours. Contingency, community defense, your mutual aid network, your 3 to 5 trusted neighbors with complementary skills and shared security protocols. This is your force multiplier when individual defense is insufficient for the threat. Emergency, evasion. Sometimes the best defense is not being there. A pre-planned evacuation to a secondary location, executed before the threat reaches your position. Knowing when to fight and when to leave is a judgment call that requires advanced planning, pre-positioned supplies at the secondary location, and the discipline to abandon your primary location when the math says staying is losing. Print your PACE plans for all 6 critical functions: communication, water, power, food, movement, medical, and security. That is 7 PACE plans, 28 layers of capability. Put them on your refrigerator next to your threat board. Review them with your family. Test 1 layer per week. The family that has PACE plans does not panic when the primary fails. They shift to the alternate and keep moving. The family that has no PACE plan freezes at the first failure because they have no next step. Choose which family yours is going to be. Inside TPP, the PACE planning module covers every critical function in detail, with specific product recommendations, cost breakdowns, and testing protocols for each layer. The SOG series covers community-level PACE planning for mutual aid networks. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me talk about something I have been thinking about since we started packing boxes for the move. Legacy. What are you leaving behind? Not in the house, in the world. When this is all over, when the last episode has been recorded and the last module has been written and the last lab result has come back, what did you build? I think about this more than I used to. The GFR sitting barely above 20 makes you think about things differently. Not with fear. I have been afraid before. Desert Storm, Afghanistan, September 2023 when I was drowning in my own lung fluid. Fear is not new to me. This is different. This is the slow recognition that the time you have is not unlimited, that every module you build, every episode you record, every person you reach is part of something that will outlast you. The Total Preparedness Program is not just a membership platform. It is my knowledge, my experience, my 2 wars, my 20 years of clinical practice, my CR training, my GWU fellowship, all of it, preserved in a form that people can access and learn from whether I am here or not. That is the mission. That has always been the mission. Not subscribers, not revenue, not views. Legacy. A body of work that says, I was here, I saw what was coming, and I did everything I could to make sure the people who trusted me were ready for it. My daughter will grow up knowing her father built something. Not a building, not a company. Something that teaches people how to survive, how to protect their families, how to be ready when the world decides to test them. Giannina will be able to look at over 400 modules and know that her dad sat at a kitchen table, exhausted from work, sore from moving boxes, watching his kidney numbers, and still wrote the next guide, still recorded the next episode, still answered the next question from a member who needed help. That is what I am leaving behind. That is the legacy. And if my miracle comes, and I believe it will, then the legacy gets bigger. More modules, more episodes, more city survival guides, more medical series, more years of standing the Overwatch. Either way, the work is done. Either way, the work continues. Either way, somebody's family is better prepared because I showed up and did the job. That is enough. That is more than enough. Let me go deeper on one more medical topic that I think is critical right now: wound irrigation. Because I covered wound packing and hemostatic gauze in previous episodes, I covered sepsis last episode, and the missing link between stopping the bleed and preventing sepsis is proper wound irrigation. This is the step most people skip because it is boring. It is not dramatic. It does not involve a tourniquet or a chest seal. But it is the step that determines whether the wound heals or the wound kills. When you stop a bleed, you save a life in the moment. When you irrigate a wound properly, you save a life over the next 3 to 10 days. Because every wound, no matter how clean it looks, is contaminated. Dirt, clothing fibers, bacteria from the skin surface, bacteria from the object that caused the wound, all of it is in the tissue. If it stays there, infection follows. If infection is not controlled, sepsis follows. If sepsis is not treated, death follows. The purpose of wound irrigation is to physically remove contaminants from the wound bed using a stream of clean fluid under pressure. Not a trickle, not a gentle rinse. A pressurized stream that dislodges debris and bacteria from the tissue and flushes them out of the wound. The ideal irrigating fluid is sterile, normal saline. A liter bag of 0.9% sodium chloride is the clinical standard. In a grid-down scenario, you may not have sterile saline. Clean, drinkable water is an acceptable alternative. Tap water that is safe to drink is safe to irrigate with. Boiled and cooled water is better. Water purified through your gravity-fed filter is acceptable. Do not irrigate with hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is cytotoxic, meaning it kills the cells you are trying to save, along with the bacteria you are trying to remove. It damages the healthy tissue at the wound margins and delays healing. It looks impressive because it fizzes. The fizzing is your tissue being destroyed. Do not use it for wound irrigation. Its only role is as a cleaning agent for intact skin around the wound, not in the wound itself. Do not irrigate with full-strength betadine or povidone iodine. Undiluted, it is also cytotoxic. A very dilute solution, 1 part betadine to 9 parts water, is acceptable for initial wound cleaning when nothing else is available, but clean water is preferred for ongoing irrigation. The irrigation technique. You need pressure, not fire hose pressure, approximately 8 to 12 psi, which is the pressure generated by a standard 60 milliliter syringe with an 18 gauge splash shield or catheter tip. Fill the syringe with your irrigating fluid. Position the tip about 2 inches from the wound. Depress the plunger firmly and direct the stream across the entire wound bed. Repeat until you have used a minimum of 250 to 500 milliliters for a small wound and 1 to 2 liters for a large or heavily contaminated wound. If you do not have a syringe, an improvised irrigation device can be made from a clean plastic bag. Fill the bag with clean water. Poke a small hole in one corner. Squeeze the bag to produce a pressurized stream. It is not as controlled as a syringe, but it works. After irrigation, inspect the wound. Look for remaining debris, foreign bodies, dead tissue, and any material that the irrigation did not remove. If visible debris remains, irrigate again. If dead tissue is present, debridement may be necessary, which is a more advanced procedure covered in the wound care manual inside TPP. After irrigation, dress the wound. A clean gauze dressing secured with medical tape. For wounds that are at risk of infection, which in a grid-down scenario is essentially all wounds, apply a thin layer of topical antibiotic ointment before dressing. Bacitracin is preferred over Neosporin because Neosporin contains neomycin, which causes allergic contact dermatitis in approximately 10% of users. Change the dressing every 24 hours. At each dressing change, irrigate again, inspect the wound, assess for signs of infection, redness spreading from the wound margins, warmth, swelling, purulent drainage, increased pain, and apply a fresh dressing. Keep a wound log. Date and time of injury, mechanism of injury, what caused it, location and size of wound, irrigation fluid used and volume, dressing type and time applied, assessment at each dressing change, any medications given. This log is the field equivalent of a medical chart. It allows you to track whether the wound is improving or deteriorating. It is also what you hand to a medical provider if you eventually reach one. A wound that has been documented from the time of injury through daily dressing changes tells the provider everything they need to know to continue management. Stock wound irrigation supplies in your extended medical kit. A 60 milliliter irrigation syringe with a catheter tip. 500 milliliters of sterile normal saline in a squeeze bottle. Gauze pads, medical tape, bacitracin ointment, nitrile gloves, antiseptic wipes for cleaning the skin around the wound. This entire wound care kit costs under $20 and stores indefinitely in a cool, dry location. Inside TPP, the complete wound care manual covers irrigation, debridement, wound closure techniques including suturing and stapling, and improvised closure methods, dressing selection for different wound types, infection recognition and treatment, and the full 36-module wound management curriculum. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Let me go into a topic that connects to both the Iran war and the broader geopolitical landscape. Energy independence as a national security imperative and a personal preparedness strategy. The reason gas is $4 a gallon is not complicated. 20% of the world's oil supply passes through a strait that is controlled by a country we are at war with. That single vulnerability, that one geographic choke point, has added over $1 per gallon to your gas price, billions of dollars to the cost of the war, and immeasurable economic pressure to every American household. This is not a new vulnerability. We have known about the Strait of Hormuz vulnerability since the 1970s. Every president since Carter has identified it as a national security risk, and yet here we are in 2026, still dependent on foreign oil moving through a strait controlled by a hostile power. At the national level, energy independence requires political will that neither party has consistently demonstrated. Drill more, build more refineries, build more nuclear plants, build more renewable generation, reduce dependence on any single source or any single transit point. This is not a partisan position. It is a strategic imperative that both parties have failed to fully execute. At the personal level, energy independence is something you can actually achieve, and it starts with reducing your dependence on the grid and on the gas pump. Solar. A rooftop solar system with battery storage makes you partially or fully independent of the electrical grid. The cost has dropped dramatically over the past decade. A basic system that covers your essential loads, refrigerator, lights, communications, medical equipment, can be installed for $5,000 to $15,000, depending on your region and energy needs. Federal tax credits currently offset 30% of the cost. The payback period for a well-designed system is typically 7 to 12 years. After that, your electricity is essentially free for the remaining 25 to 30 years of the system's lifespan. If a full rooftop system is out of budget, a portable solar setup with a battery bank gives you backup power for essentials at a fraction of the cost. A 200-watt portable solar panel paired with a portable power station in the 500 to 1,000 watt-hour range costs $300 to $800 and can charge phones, run LED lights, power a CPAP machine, run a small fan, and charge radio batteries indefinitely. Wood. If you have access to timber, a wood stove provides heating and cooking capability that is completely independent of the grid, the gas company, and the propane supplier. A quality wood stove costs $500 to $3,000 installed. The fuel grows on trees, literally. A properly managed woodlot provides sustainable heating fuel indefinitely. In a grid-down scenario, the person with a wood stove is warm. The person with a heat pump is cold. Propane. Propane stores indefinitely. Unlike gasoline, which degrades in months, a propane tank can sit for decades, and the fuel is still perfectly usable. A 500-gallon buried propane tank, filled at summer rates, provides heating, cooking, and generator fuel for months, depending on usage. Propane generators are quieter, cleaner, and require less maintenance than gasoline generators. The point is not that you need all of these. The point is that every layer of energy independence you add reduces your vulnerability to the Strait of Hormuz, to tariffs, to grid failures, to policy decisions made by people who will never experience the consequences of those decisions. The more energy you produce or store yourself, the less the world's chaos costs you. Your energy action item this episode. Assess your energy dependence. What percentage of your energy needs comes from the grid, from gasoline, from propane, from your own generation? If the answer is 100% from external sources, you are 100% vulnerable. Start reducing that number. Even a $200 portable solar panel with a battery bank moves you from 100% dependent to 95% dependent with a backup for essentials. Start somewhere. Start today. Let me talk about one more thing before we move to the closing segments. Information management during a crisis. In a crisis, information is as critical as water and ammunition, but information quality degrades during a crisis just as fast as food quality degrades without refrigeration. Social media becomes a cesspool of rumors, misinformation, panic, and deliberate manipulation. Cable news becomes a loop of the same 30 seconds of footage replayed with increasingly dramatic commentary. Your neighbors become sources of information that is 3 iterations removed from anything resembling truth. Here is your information pace plan. Primary, trusted news sources accessed through the internet. Your phone, your computer, your tablet. AP, Reuters, your preferred news outlets. Filter through multiple sources. If only one outlet is reporting something, it may not be true. If 5 outlets are reporting the same thing from different angles, it probably is. Alternate, AM/FM radio. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio that receives AM, FM, and NOAA weather band. AM radio signals travel farther than FM, especially at night. NOAA Weather Radio provides emergency alerts, severe weather warnings, and civil emergency broadcasts. This works when the internet is down and cell networks are congested. Contingency, ham radio. With a ham radio license and a basic HF receiver, you can monitor amateur radio networks that relay news, weather, and emergency information across hundreds or thousands of miles. Ham radio operators were the first to report the extent of destruction after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, when all other communication systems had failed. This layer requires a license, some equipment, and some knowledge. The TPP ham radio course covers all 3. Emergency, physical observation, and word of mouth. What you can see with your own eyes and hear from people you trust in your immediate vicinity. This is the most limited and least reliable information source, but in a total communication failure, it is all you have. Develop relationships with trustworthy neighbors now. The person whose information you rely on during a crisis should be someone you have already vetted during peacetime. The critical rule for information management during a crisis: slow down. In a crisis, the pressure to act on the first piece of information you receive is enormous. Resist it. Bad information leads to bad decisions. Bad decisions in a crisis can be fatal. Verify before you act. Cross-reference before you move. And if you cannot verify, wait. Inaction based on uncertainty is almost always safer than action based on bad intelligence. The exception is an immediate physical threat. If someone is breaking into your home, you do not pause to verify the information. You act. But for strategic decisions, whether to evacuate, whether to change your shelter-in-place posture, whether to use stored resources, slow down and verify. Your information action item this episode: buy a hand crank radio with AM, FM, and NOAA weather band capability. They cost $20 to $40. Put it in your emergency supplies. Test it. Know how to use it. When the internet goes dark and your phone has no signal, that $20 radio is your connection to the outside world. I want to go deeper on something I touched on earlier: the Ebola response and why it is failing. Because this is not just a medical story. It is a preparedness case study in what happens when systems break down. And if you pay attention to why the Ebola response is failing in the DRC right now, you will understand exactly what will happen in your community when a crisis overwhelms the local response capacity. The DRC Ebola response is failing for 5 specific reasons that map directly to civilian preparedness principles. Reason 1. Security. Eastern DRC is one of the most violent regions on Earth. Dozens of armed groups operate in Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu provinces. Health workers have been attacked. Ebola treatment centers have been targeted. Contact tracing teams cannot safely access entire communities because of ongoing armed conflict. The disease is spreading in areas where the response teams physically cannot go. The preparedness lesson. In a domestic crisis, whether it is a pandemic, a natural disaster, or civil unrest, security is the prerequisite for every other response function. You cannot treat patients if the treatment area is not secure. You cannot distribute supplies if the distribution point is not secure. You cannot evacuate if the evacuation route is not secure. Security comes first, always. This is why home security, perimeter awareness, and community defense capability are not secondary preps. They are foundational. Without security, every other prep is at risk. Reason 2. Surveillance gaps. The initial cases in this outbreak likely occurred in January or February in the town of Mongboalu. The outbreak was not identified until May, 3 to 4 months of undetected transmission before anyone sounded the alarm. Why? Because the surveillance infrastructure in Eastern DRC is overwhelmed, underfunded, and operating in a conflict zone. Dead body management teams encountered Ebola victims in March and contracted the disease themselves without knowing what they were dealing with because the diagnostic tests initially used only detected Zaire Ebola virus, not Bundibugyo. The wrong test was being used for months. The preparedness lesson. You cannot respond to what you cannot detect. Surveillance, monitoring, awareness, paying attention to what is happening in your environment before it becomes obvious is the critical early warning function that determines whether you respond proactively or reactively. In your home, this means monitoring news sources, tracking local health department alerts, watching for patterns in your community, and maintaining the pulse oximeter, the thermometer, and the symptom diary that lets you catch a developing problem before it becomes a crisis. The people who prepared for Ebola in May, when the WHO declared the emergency, are in a fundamentally different position than the people who will scramble when the first case lands in a U.S. city. Reason 3. Diagnostic failure. The Bundibugyo virus is a different species than the Zaire Ebola virus that previous DRC outbreaks were caused by. The initial diagnostic tests used in the field only detected Zaire. Positive Bundibugyo cases tested negative. For weeks, cases were being missed because the test was looking for the wrong virus. By the time the correct diagnostic was deployed, transmission chains had already expanded beyond the capacity to trace them. The preparedness lesson. The tools you have must match the threat you face. A tourniquet does not stop an infection. An N95 does not stop dehydration. A water filter does not stop a bullet. The correct response to the correct threat with the correct tools is the core principle of preparedness. If your pandemic kit contains surgical masks instead of N95 respirators, you have the wrong tool. If your medical kit has Band-Aids instead of hemostatic gauze, you have the wrong tool. Audit your preparations against the actual threats on the threat board, not the threats you are comfortable preparing for, the threats that actually exist. Reason 4. Resource cuts. Foreign aid cuts have reduced the resources available for the Ebola response at the exact moment the response needs more resources, not fewer. Doctors Without Borders has 1,400 staff on the ground and publicly says it is not enough. Airport closures and flight restrictions are disrupting the flow of personnel, diagnostics, and supplies into the affected areas. The logistical infrastructure that a response depends on is being degraded while the outbreak accelerates. The preparedness lesson. You cannot depend on external resources arriving when you need them. The government will not save you in time. The hospital may not have capacity. The supply chain may be disrupted. The resources you have on hand when the crisis starts are the resources you have for the crisis. This is the fundamental argument for preparedness. Not because the government is evil, not because hospitals are incompetent, because logistics take time, demand surges are unpredictable, and the gap between when you need help and when help arrives is the gap that kills people. Fill that gap with preparation. Reason 5. Community resistance. In some areas of eastern DRC, communities distrust the Ebola response teams. There are historical reasons for this distrust. Some communities hide sick family members rather than sending them to treatment centers. Dead bodies are washed and buried according to traditional practices that involve direct contact with the deceased, which is one of the highest risk transmission events in Ebola. Community engagement teams are working to build trust, but trust takes time, and the virus does not wait. The preparedness lesson. Community trust is built before the crisis, not during it. If your neighbors do not trust you before the emergency, they will not trust you during the emergency. If your community does not have relationships, shared plans, and mutual understanding before the event, it will not develop them under stress. Community building is not a nice-to-have prep. It is a survival-critical prep. The communities in DRC that trusted the response teams early contained the virus within their health zones. The communities that resisted allowed the virus to spread. The same dynamic will play out in any American community facing any crisis. Trust saves lives. Build it now. Now let me go deeper on a topic that I have touched on in previous episodes, but want to give a full treatment today. Water purification for grid-down scenarios. This connects directly to the dehydration segment from Sick Call and to the broader theme of self-sufficiency that runs through everything I teach. Water is the first thing that kills you in a grid-down scenario, Not violence, not starvation, water. A human being can survive 3 weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. And that 3-day clock starts the moment your municipal supply stops flowing or becomes contaminated. Your water preparedness has 3 tiers. Tier 1, stored water. This is your immediate supply. 1 gallon per person per day is the minimum standard, and it is inadequate for anything beyond basic survival. In hot weather, with physical labor, with medical needs, with cooking and hygiene, the realistic requirement is 2 gallons per person per day. For a family of 4, that is 8 gallons per day. For 30 days, that is 240 gallons. That is a significant storage commitment. Commercially bottled water stores for 2 years or more when kept in a cool, dark place. Tap water stored in food-grade containers with a small amount of unscented liquid chlorine bleach, 8 drops per gallon for clear water, stores for 6 months before needing rotation. Blue plastic water storage drums in the 55-gallon size are the standard for bulk storage. 2 of them give you 110 gallons. For a family of 4, that is roughly 14 days at 2 gallons per person per day. That is your minimum starting point. Water bricks and stackable water containers in the 3 to 5 gallon size are useful for portability. If you need to evacuate, you cannot take a 55-gallon drum with you, but you can throw 4 water bricks in the back of the Gladiator. Tier 2. Purification capability. Stored water runs out. Purification capability does not. You need the ability to take water from a natural source, a creek, a river, a pond, a rain collection system, and make it safe to drink. Gravity-fed water filters are the gold standard for home use. The Berkey system is the most recognized brand in the preparedness community. The Pro 1 is an excellent alternative. Both use ceramic and carbon filter elements that remove bacteria, parasites, and many chemical contaminants. A set of filter elements lasts for thousands of gallons before replacement. Chemical purification. Unscented liquid chlorine bleach at 8 drops per gallon for clear water, 16 drops for cloudy water. Let it stand for 30 minutes before drinking. This kills bacteria and most viruses, but does not remove chemical contaminants or all parasites. Cryptosporidium in particular is resistant to chlorine at normal concentrations. Water purification tablets. Aquatabs, Potable Aqua, and Catadine Micropure are common brands. They are lightweight, portable, and effective for individual use. Each tablet treats 1 liter. Keep a supply in every kit, every vehicle, and every bug-out bag. Boiling. Boiling water for 1 minute at a rolling boil, 3 minutes at altitudes above 6,500 feet, kills all biological pathogens. It does not remove chemical contaminants. Boiling requires fuel, a container, and time. It is always available as a last resort, but it is energy intensive and impractical for large volumes. UV purification. The SteriPen and similar devices use ultraviolet light to kill bacteria, viruses, and parasites in clear water. They run on batteries and treat 1 liter at a time in about 90 seconds. They do not work on turbid water because the particles block the UV light. They are a useful addition but not a primary system. Tier 3. Water sourcing. When your stored water is gone and you need to find more, you need to know where water exists in your environment. Creeks, rivers, ponds, lakes, springs, and rainwater are all potential sources. Rooftop rainwater collection systems can harvest hundreds of gallons from a single rainstorm. A basic rain barrel system costs $50 to $100 and provides a renewable water source that requires only a roof, a gutter, and a container. Learn where the nearest natural water sources are relative to your home. Drive or walk the route. Know the distance. Know the terrain. In a grid-down scenario where you are hauling water by hand, every mile matters. Inside TPP, the water purification and storage modules cover every tier in detail, including system comparisons, filter element replacement schedules, chemical treatment protocols, and the complete rain collection system build guide. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Your water action item this episode. Inventory your current water storage. How many gallons do you have on hand right now? Divide by the number of people in your household. Divide by 2 gallons per person per day. That number is how many days of water you have. If it is less than 14 days, fix that this episode. Start with 2 55-gallon drums. That takes you to 14 days for a family of 4. Now let me talk about a topic that ties into the Iran situation directly. Fuel storage. I have covered the basics in previous episodes, but I want to go into specific product recommendations and the math that most people get wrong. Gasoline for storage must be treated with a fuel stabilizer. The 3 products I recommend in order of preference. PRI-G. This is the gold standard. It is not the cheapest option. It is the best option. PRI-G treats gasoline for storage up to 12 months and can actually restore degraded fuel that has started to go stale. A 16-ounce bottle treats 256 gallons and costs approximately $20. That is less than 8 cents per gallon of treated fuel. Startron Enzyme Fuel Treatment, an enzyme-based stabilizer that prevents ethanol-related problems, including phase separation. Startron is excellent for ethanol-blended fuel, which is most fuel sold in America. An 8-ounce bottle treats 48 gallons and costs approximately $10. Stable Storage, the most widely available fuel stabilizer in America. You can find it at every auto parts store, Walmart, and hardware store. It works. It is not as effective as PRI-G for long-term storage, but it is reliable for 6 to 12 months. A 10-ounce bottle treats 25 gallons and costs approximately $8. Whichever you choose, add the stabilizer to the fuel before you fill the container, not after. This ensures the stabilizer mixes thoroughly with the fuel as it flows in. Container selection. Red plastic fuel cans in the 5-gallon size are the standard. They are cheap, available everywhere, and functional. Their weaknesses are that they can off-gas fuel vapor through the plastic over time. The spouts on newer EPA-compliant cans are universally terrible, and they deteriorate in UV light if left in the sun. NATO-style steel jerry cans are superior in every measurable way. They are sealed, they do not off-gas, they last for decades, and they are the standard that every military in the world uses for fuel storage. A quality steel jerry can costs $30 to $50. It is worth every penny. Storage location. Fuel vapor is heavier than air and accumulates at floor level. Never store fuel in an attached garage, in a basement, or inside your home. A detached shed is ideal. If you do not have a detached structure, the furthest corner of your property in a shaded area, away from the house and away from ignition sources, is your storage location. The math. For a family with 2 vehicles and a generator, I recommend a minimum of 25 gallons of stored treated gasoline. 5 5-gallon containers. At current prices of roughly $3.50 to $4 per gallon, that is approximately $90 to $100 to fill. Add $20 for stabilizer. $120 total buys you independence from gas station lines during a crisis and a price lock on fuel you bought before the next spike. Rotation. First in, first out. Every 90 days, pour your oldest stored fuel into your vehicle's tank and replace it with fresh treated fuel. This ensures your stored fuel is always within the stabilizer's effective window and you are never sitting on degraded fuel. If you heat with propane, call your propane supplier today. Summer fill rates are always cheaper than fall fill rates. Every week you wait past August is money lost. Lock in a summer fill price now. Let me talk about something that connects the Ebola threat to your daily life in a way most people have not considered. Supply chain disruption from pandemic response. If the Ebola outbreak reaches international travel hubs with sustained transmission, the response will include travel restrictions, quarantines, port closures, and shipping disruptions. We saw exactly this during COVID. The difference is that Ebola has a 44% case fatality rate. COVID's was roughly 1 to 2%, depending on the variant and the population. The societal response to a virus that kills 44% of the people it infects will be orders of magnitude more aggressive than what we experience with COVID. Imagine the COVID lockdowns with a death rate 20 to 40 times higher. Imagine the supply chain disruptions of 2020 with ports closing not because of policy, but because dock workers are dying. Imagine the hospital capacity crisis of 2020 with a virus that kills nearly half the people it puts in the ICU. I am not predicting this will happen. I am telling you it is possible. The outbreak is accelerating. It is in 5 provinces. Cases have been imported to France and Germany. A U.S. citizen was infected. The travel restriction expires in 9 days. If you are waiting for the outbreak to reach the United States before you prepare for it, you are already too late. The time to prepare for a pandemic is before it arrives. Not during, not after, before. Stock your pandemic kit. Stock your food storage. Stock your medical supplies. Stock your water. And do it now while the supply chain is still functioning and the shelves are still full. By the time Ebola reaches a U.S. city, if it does, the shelves will be empty within 48 hours. We watched this happen with COVID. Toilet paper, hand sanitizer, masks, cleaning supplies, all gone within days of the first community transmission. With a 44% case fatality rate, the panic buying will make COVID look like a practice run. Let me shift gears entirely and talk about something practical that you can do today: canning. Specifically, pressure canning meat for long-term food storage. I am covering this because of the food price inflation numbers I laid out earlier. Ground beef at $6.82 a pound. Beef predicted to climb another 10%. The cheapest protein on the shelf today is the most expensive protein on the shelf tomorrow. If you buy meat in bulk now and preserve it through pressure canning, you are locking in today's prices and building a protein reserve that stores for years. Pressure canning is the only safe method for canning low-acid foods, including meat, poultry, fish, and vegetables. Water bath canning does not reach the temperatures necessary to kill Clostridium botulinum spores, which produce botulism toxin. Botulism is fatal without treatment. Do not water bath can meat, ever. The equipment you need: a pressure canner, not a pressure cooker. The All-American pressure canner is the gold standard. It uses a metal-to-metal seal with no gasket, which means nothing to replace and nothing to degrade. The 21.5 quart model holds 7 quart jars per load. It costs approximately $300 to $350, and it will last a lifetime. Presto also makes quality pressure canners at a lower price point, typically $100 to $150, using a gasket seal that needs occasional replacement. Mason jars. Wide-mouth quart jars are the standard for canning meat. Ball and Kerr are the standard brands. Do not use off-brand jars with no temper rating. A case of 12 wide-mouth quart jars costs $12 to $15. Lids and bands. New lids for every canning session. Bands can be reused if they are not rusted or bent. Tatler reusable lids are an alternative that eliminates the need to buy new lids each time and stores indefinitely. The process for canning ground beef. Brown the meat in a skillet. Drain the grease. Pack the hot meat into hot sterilized quart jars, leaving 1 inch of headspace. Add 1 teaspoon of salt per quart if desired. Wipe the jar rims clean. Apply lids and bands finger tight. Process at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes for quarts at altitudes below 1,000 feet. Adjust pressure for higher altitudes according to the USDA canning guide. 1 pound of ground beef fills approximately 1 pint jar or half a quart jar. A 10-pound package of ground beef yields approximately 10 pints or 5 quarts of canned meat. At today's price of $6.82 per pound, 10 pounds costs $68.20. That $68 produces 5 quarts of shelf-stable protein that stores for 3 to 5 years at room temperature. Compare that to buying beef in 3 years when economists predict prices will be 15 to 20% higher than today. You are not just preserving food, you are preserving purchasing power. The USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning is the authoritative reference. It is available free online. Follow it precisely. Do not deviate from tested recipes, tested processing times, or tested pressure levels. Canning is safe when done correctly and lethal when done wrong. There is no middle ground. Inside TPP, the food preservation modules cover pressure canning, water bath canning, dehydrating, freeze drying, fermentation, and long-term storage protocols for every food category. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Your food action item this episode. If you do not own a pressure canner, buy one this month. If you already own one, buy 10 pounds of ground beef this episode and can it. 5 quarts of shelf-stable protein for $68. That is the best return on investment in your entire food storage program. Let me talk about something that most preppers do not think about until they need it. Dental emergencies in a grid-down scenario. A toothache is annoying when you have a dentist. A dental abscess in a grid-down scenario can kill you. An untreated dental infection can spread to the soft tissues of the neck, causing Ludwig's angina, a rapidly progressive infection of the floor of the mouth that can obstruct the airway. It can also spread into the bloodstream, causing sepsis, which I covered in a previous episode. A tooth problem becomes a life-threatening emergency faster than most people realize. Your grid-down dental kit should include the following: clove oil, also called eugenol. This is a natural analgesic and antiseptic that has been used in dentistry for centuries. Apply it directly to the affected tooth or the gum tissue around an infected tooth using a cotton ball. It provides temporary pain relief and has genuine antimicrobial properties. A small bottle costs $3 to $5 and belongs in every medical kit. Temporary dental filling material. Products like Dentemp sell for $5 to $8 at any pharmacy and allow you to temporarily fill a lost filling or cap a broken tooth. This protects the exposed nerve from air, food, and temperature changes while you figure out your next move. Dental extraction forceps. This is an advanced tool that requires training to use safely. If you are a medical provider or have received training in dental extraction, a basic set of extraction forceps costs $30 to $50. If you have not received training, do not attempt to extract a tooth. You can cause more damage than the tooth itself. Antibiotics. Dental infections are typically caused by anaerobic bacteria. Amoxicillin is the first-line antibiotic for dental infections. Metronidazole is the alternative for penicillin-allergic patients. A rescue course of either, discussed with your prescriber now while prescriptions are still available, could prevent a dental infection from becoming sepsis. Pain management. Ibuprofen and acetaminophen together provide better dental pain relief than either one alone. The combination alternating protocol, 400 milligrams of ibuprofen alternating with 500 milligrams of acetaminophen every 3 hours, provides near continuous pain relief and is evidence-based for dental pain management. Stock both in your medical kit. Prevention is everything. In a grid-down scenario, you will not have access to a dentist. Brush twice daily. Floss daily. Maintain your dental health now, because a cavity that could have been filled in a 10-minute office visit becomes a life-threatening infection when there is no office to visit. Inside TPP, the Grid-Down Medicine series covers dental emergencies, abscess management, extraction techniques, and the complete field dental kit in detail. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Now let me go into a scenario. Every episode I give you a scenario. You decide bug in or bug out, and I walk you through the decision tree. Here is the scenario. You live in a suburban neighborhood. A major Ebola case has been confirmed in a city 200 miles from your home. Within 48 hours, 3 additional cases are confirmed in your metro area, all linked to a healthcare worker who treated the initial patient. Your local hospital announces it is diverting all ambulances to other facilities while it decontaminates. Schools are closed. Your governor declares a state of emergency. Social media is exploding with panic. Your neighbors are loading their cars. Gas stations have lines wrapping around the block. Bug in or bug out? Bug in. Absolutely. Without question. Bug in. Here is why. Ebola does not spread through the air. It spreads through direct contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person or with contaminated surfaces. Unlike COVID, which spread through respiratory droplets and aerosols, Ebola requires physical contact with blood, vomit, diarrhea, sweat, or saliva of a symptomatic person. If you are in your home with your family and nobody in your household is symptomatic, you are in the safest possible location. Bugging out puts you on a highway with thousands of panicking people. Gas stations are overwhelmed. Your exposure risk increases at every gas pump handle, every rest stop bathroom, every drive-through window. You are trading the safety of your home for the chaos of the road with no guarantee that your destination is safer than where you started. The correct response to a nearby Ebola case is shelter in place with your pandemic kit, your food storage, your water supply, and your isolation protocol. Minimize contact with anyone outside your household. If someone must leave the house for supplies, they wear gloves and a mask. They touch as few surfaces as possible, and they decontaminate when they return. Hands washed with soap and water for 20 seconds. Clothing removed at the door and laundered separately. Shoes left outside. Monitor every member of your household for symptoms twice daily. Temperature check morning and evening. Any fever above 100.4 degrees, any unexplained vomiting or diarrhea, any bleeding that is not from an obvious wound, triggers your isolation protocol. The symptomatic person goes to a designated isolation room. A single caregiver provides care using full PPE. All other household members stay away. This is not panic. This is protocol. And the household that has a protocol is the household that survives. The household that panics and runs is the household that gets stuck on a highway in the hot sun with a quarter tank of gas and no plan. Your scenario action item. Write your household Ebola isolation protocol today. Which room is the isolation room? Who is the designated caregiver? Where is the PPE stored? How do you decontaminate surfaces? How do you dispose of contaminated waste? How do you communicate with the outside world without leaving the house? Write it down. Put it in your binder. Review it with your family. Let me talk about precious metals briefly, because the Iran deal optimism pushed gold down slightly and silver followed. Gold is trading around $2,300 to $2,400 per ounce. Silver is in the $29 to $31 range. Both pulled back slightly on the deal optimism. If you have been waiting for a dip to buy, this is a dip. Whether it lasts depends entirely on whether the Iran deal materializes or collapses. My recommendation has not changed. Start with silver if you are new to precious metals. 1 ounce American Silver Eagles or generic silver rounds from reputable mints. 1 ounce per month. 12 ounces in a year. That is a small but meaningful hedge against currency devaluation and banking system disruption. Store it at home in a secure location, not in a bank safe deposit box. And barter goods. A 12-pack of Bic lighters for $8. Travel-sized toiletry items. Individual packs of ibuprofen and Benadryl. Instant coffee packets. Mini bottles of liquor. These are the denominations of the post-collapse economy, and they cost almost nothing to stockpile now. Let me talk about one more topic before I close. Sleep. Specifically, sleep as a preparedness resource that most people are actively degrading. You cannot perform under stress if you are sleep deprived. Your cognitive function declines. Your reaction time slows. Your emotional regulation breaks down. Your immune function is impaired. Your physical recovery is compromised. Every critical function that preparedness depends on, thinking clearly, making decisions under pressure, maintaining physical endurance, fighting off infection, all of them require adequate sleep. Most American adults are chronically sleep deprived. 6 hours a night has become normalized. It is not normal. It is slow motion self-sabotage. The clinical recommendation is 7 to 9 hours for adults. The operational minimum for sustained performance under stress is 7 hours. In a crisis, your sleep will be disrupted. Stress, noise, uncomfortable conditions, guard rotations, and the general chaos of an emergency all conspire to steal sleep. The person who enters a crisis already sleep-deprived starts with a deficit that compounds every day the crisis continues. Here is your sleep preparedness protocol. Start now, before the crisis, by getting your sleep hygiene in order. Consistent schedule, same bedtime, same wake time, every day, including weekends. Your circadian rhythm is a biological system that responds to consistency. Varying your schedule by more than an hour day to day degrades sleep quality even if the total hours remain the same. Dark room. True dark, not dim, dark. Light exposure during sleep suppresses melatonin production and reduces sleep quality. Blackout curtains or a quality sleep mask. Cool temperature. The optimal sleeping temperature is between 60 and 67 degrees. Your body needs to drop its core temperature to initiate sleep. A hot room fights this process. No screens for 60 minutes before bed. The blue light from phones, tablets, and televisions suppresses melatonin and delays sleep onset. I know, I am as guilty of this as anyone, but the science is clear. For the prepper with a family member who has a chronic condition, MS, COPD, heart failure, chronic pain, sleep is even more critical because their body's recovery processes are already compromised. Protect their sleep as aggressively as you protect their medication supply. In a grid-down scenario, your sleep kit should include a quality sleeping pad for ground sleeping if you are displaced, a sleep mask for daytime sleeping during guard rotations, earplugs for noise environments, and a familiar pillow or comfort item because psychological comfort affects sleep quality more than most people realize. A 50-cent pair of foam earplugs and a $3 sleep mask are genuine preparedness tools. Stock them. Your sleep action item this episode. For the next 7 days, set a consistent bedtime and wake time, 7 hours minimum. No screens for the last 60 minutes. Track how you feel each morning. After 7 days, you will have more energy, better focus, better mood, and better physical recovery. That is free performance enhancement with zero equipment required. Let me talk about some channels I have been watching. Canadian Prepper covered the Iran deal announcement and the whiplash between deal imminent and last chance before decapitation. His analysis on the disconnect between Trump's statements and Iran's denials was sharp, and I largely agree with his assessment. If you are trying to make sense of the Iran situation, Canadian Prepper is cutting through the noise better than most cable news analysts. Watch him. Skinny Medic released new content on austere environment fluid resuscitation that ties directly to what I covered in Sick Call today. His IV fluid administration walkthrough is one of the best I have seen from anyone in the preparedness space. If you have medical training and want to develop your IV skills for grid-down scenarios, Skinny Medic is your resource. Alaska Prepper put out an urgent video on stockpiling before September. His timeline aligns with what I have been saying about the compounding effect of Iran, tariffs, and seasonal food price increases hitting simultaneously in the fall. If you are procrastinating on food storage, let Alaska Prepper's urgency motivate you. Bear Independent continues to be the gold standard for practical homesteading and community resilience content. His latest on community food production during economic stress is worth your time if you are thinking about neighborhood-level preparedness. City Prepping released a budget breakdown for building a pandemic preparedness kit under $50. Given the Ebola numbers I just laid out, that video is required viewing for anyone who has been putting off their pandemic kit because of cost concerns. Send it to the family member who keeps saying they cannot afford to prepare. Now, these are the voyages. If you have been following this show, you know I love Star Trek. Not Star Wars, Star Trek. And today I want to tell you about one specific episode that changed the way I see the world. Not a new episode, an old one from the original series. And I want to tell you where I was when I saw it, because that matters more than the episode itself. I grew up in the 1970s and 1980s as an American military kid stationed in West Germany. The Iron Curtain was only a few hours away. In the 70s, the Pershing missiles were already there. Pershing 1s and 1As. Quiet, heavy, constant. By the early 80s, the tension climbed higher. The newer Pershing 2s arrived. The protests outside the gates grew louder. The rhetoric from both sides got hotter. And every so often, the base would go to a higher alert state, and you could feel it in the air, in the way adults spoke more carefully, in the way the night seemed to hold its breath. There is a sound that still finds me sometimes in the middle of the night. Not the jets, not the church bells from the German towns beyond the fence. It is the low growl of heavy convoys moving after dark, and the quiet knowledge that somewhere on or near our army base sat the Pershing missiles. That was the world I lived in the first time I saw Star Trek's The Omega Glory. We only had one channel, Armed Forces Network, AFN. There was no choice. Whatever they decided to put on that night was what you watched. And I loved Star Trek. So when it came on, my father and I sat down together in front of that grainy base television and watched. Most of the time, Star Trek was pure escape. Spaceships, alien planets, Kirk and Spock saving the day. But this episode never felt like escape. It felt like a warning. The Enterprise finds the wreck of another starship, the Exeter, orbiting a planet called Omega-4. The entire crew is dead, turned to crystals by some disease. Only the captain, Ronald Tracy, is still alive on the surface. He has been living among the local people, the Combs, who are at war with a savage tribe called the Yangs. Tracy is convinced the planet's atmosphere grants near immortality, and he has been using his phasers to help the Combs slaughter the Yangs so he can stay. Classic Prime Directive violation. Kirk beams down, things go sideways, and eventually the Yangs overwhelm the Combs. Then comes the moment that hit me like a punch to the chest, even as a kid, sitting there next to my dad. The Yangs bring out their sacred objects, a tattered American flag, and a document they call the Holy Words. Kirk looks at it and realizes what it is. It is the United States Constitution, word for word, on a planet thousands of light years away. The Yangs are Yankees. The Combs are communists. On this parallel Earth, the Cold War went hot. Biological weapons were used. The communists won. The Americans lost everything. Centuries later, their descendants are reduced to a tribal people who still revere the flag and the Constitution, but they have forgotten what any of it means. They chant the words like a religious spell. They treat the document as a sacred object. But the ideas, freedom, equality, we the people, those have been lost. Kirk stands in front of them, these fierce, half-starved people who look like something out of a post-apocalyptic nightmare, and he does something I have never forgotten. He reads them the preamble. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. And then he explains it, not as a magic spell, not as a tribal chant, but as a living idea. That these words only have power if the people understand them and live them. That they apply to everyone, even the Combs they just defeated. As a kid sitting on that army base in West Germany, watching with my father, that scene wrecked me. Because I lived every day with the knowledge that the exact opposite of that parallel history was being maintained by force. The missiles outside were there so that the communists would not win. So that our version of the Yangs would not end up as tribal survivors clutching a tattered flag and a document they no longer understood. We were the ones still holding the line, and yet the episode asked a quiet, dangerous question. What good is the flag if you forget what it stands for? What good are the words if they become just another sacred object instead of a living promise? I carried that question with me from the 70s into the 80s. When the Pershing IIs arrived and the protests swelled and the world seemed to lean closer to the edge, the episode came back to me with even more force. As a teenager, I understood better what was at stake. The Yangs had lost the meaning of their own words. We still had ours, but only as long as we remembered them, only as long as we lived them, only as long as the line held. I remember walking to school on base after watching that episode for the first time with my dad, and then years later walking the same roads during higher alert periods in the mid-80s, past the PX, past the American flags that flew everywhere, past the kids whose parents worked on the missile systems. And I kept thinking about those Yangs, how close we all were to becoming them. One miscalculation, one finger on a button, one bad night, and civilization, the real meaning of those words, could be gone, leaving only symbols and survivors who no longer knew why the symbols mattered. Looking back now, decades later, what stays with me is not just the fear, it is the hope buried inside Kirk's speech. The idea that even after everything is lost, even after the war is fought, and the winners and losers have both been reduced to something smaller, the words can still be recovered. That someone can still stand up and say, these are not magic, these are yours, but only if you understand them, only if you live them, only if you extend them, even to the people you just defeated. I did not have the language for it as a kid, sitting next to my father on that single AFN channel. I just knew that something important had been said on that grainy television screen, while real nuclear weapons sat a few kilometers away. We the people, under the Pershings, through the 70s and the 80s, trying to remember what the words actually mean before it is too late. And that is why I love Star Trek. Not because of the spaceships, not because of the phasers, not because of the alien planets. Because a television show written in the 1960s looked a kid in the eye on an army base in West Germany and said the words matter. The ideas matter. And if you ever forget that, you become the Yangs. You become the people who have the flag but lost the meaning. I have never forgotten that, and I never will. If you are a Trekkie, sound off in the comments. If you are not, go watch the Omega Glory, Season 2, Episode 23. Then come back and tell me Kirk was wrong. You will not be able to. Now the Veterans Corner. Day 157 of the Iran War. The president told America this weekend that negotiations are ongoing and a deal is imminent. Today, he told reporters, this is Iran's last chance before decapitation. Your brothers and sisters are still deployed across the Middle East. U.S. bases in Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain have been targeted by Iranian proxies. 3 American service members have been killed. The war has cost over $37 billion. 2/3 of Americans in a recent poll said the war is not worth the fight. But the men and women in uniform do not get to have opinions about whether the war is worth it. They go where they are sent, and they do what they are told. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers, regardless of where you stand on the politics. If you are a combat veteran with a disability rating, let me remind you about special monthly compensation. SMC-S pays $4,485 per month, $470 above the 100% scheduler rate. It requires a single 100% disability plus an additional 60% disability that is separate and distinct. Many veterans who qualify do not know it exists. It requires a separate application on VA Form 21-26-80. Talk to your VSO or a VA-accredited claims agent. If you are a veteran who is not service-connected, start the process today, not next month, today. The VFW, the American Legion, the DAV, and the Wounded Warrior Project all have trained claims agents who will help you file for free. You earned these benefits. Do not leave them on the table. If you are struggling with PTSD, hear me. I carried mine alone for too long. I have talked openly about it on this show. The hypervigilance that never shuts off. The emotional distance. The nightmares. The way certain sounds or smells take you somewhere else without warning. Asking for help is not weakness. It is the hardest kind of strength there is. I know because I had to learn that the hard way. The family bunker. I want to talk directly to the parents in my audience, and I want to keep this practical. This episode's family assignment is a blackout drill. Tonight, after dinner, turn off the main breaker in your home. All power off for 2 hours. Not as a punishment, as a practice. Watch what happens. Watch which family member panics first. Watch which family member adapts. Watch how quickly the kids get bored without screens. Watch how long it takes before someone asks where the flashlights are. Watch whether anyone in your household can actually find the flashlights without help. Then use the 2 hours. Light candles or turn on flashlights. Play a board game. Talk. Tell stories. Practice finding things in the dark. Have your kids practice calling 911 on a phone without power, which means knowing that cell phones still work during a power outage. Practice your family communication plan. Who calls who? Where do you meet if you need to leave the house? What do you grab first? 2 hours, no screens, no power, no panic, just practice. The family that has done a blackout drill is not afraid of a blackout. The family that has never experienced darkness in their own home is terrified of it. Choose which family yours is going to be. Survival Operations Group. You cannot survive alone. I say it every episode. The lone wolf dies alone. Community is the force multiplier. This episode, I want you to do something specific. Walk your neighborhood. Not drive, walk. Count the houses within a quarter mile of your home. Note which ones show signs of self-sufficiency. A garden, a workshop, solar panels, a ham radio antenna, a chicken coop. These are your potential community members. The people who are already doing something to prepare, even if they do not call themselves preppers. You do not need to knock on their door today. Just identify them. Know where they are. Know what skills they might bring. When the time comes to build your mutual aid network, you already know who to talk to. 3 to 5 trusted families within walking distance. That is the goal. Start with knowing who they are. My personal log. We are in the middle of moving, selling the house, moving in with my mother-in-law. Giannina is already there waiting for me. I threw out her crib mattress the other day and I lost it. I will tell that story in full in a separate video because it deserves its own space. But I want you to know that the empty rooms I am walking through right now are not just walls and floors. They are the rooms where my daughter went from crawling to walking, where we had dance parties to Mr. Blue Sky, where we played Star Trek with action figures, where I pretended to be asleep and mumbled Atari 2600, pew 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 pew, and she laughed every single time. I am leaving those rooms, but I am not leaving those memories. They go where she goes. My GFR is holding, barely, but holding. I watch those numbers the way a pilot watches altitude. Every lab draw is a held breath. I am still here, still building, still standing the Overwatch, and I am still waiting for my miracle. I believe it is coming. Now let me correct myself. In my last episode, I said Trump was planning fresh strikes for the weekend and that the deal was likely to fail like the June memorandum did. The strikes were planned, but Trump canceled them, citing progress toward a deal. My reporting on the planned strikes was accurate at the time. The situation changed. Today, Monday, the situation changed again, with Trump calling this Iran's last chance before decapitation and a tanker being attacked off Oman. This is a fluid situation, and I will continue to report what is known at the time and correct the record when things change. That is how this segment works. I call it right, I say so. I call it wrong, I say that too. Today the situation is genuinely uncertain, and I am comfortable saying I do not know what happens next. Nobody does, including the people making the decisions. What I am watching going forward, whether Iran confirms any agreement in the next 72 hours, whether the temporary strait route through Oman materializes, and what capacity it carries. The Ebola case count, which is updating daily and accelerating. The August 12th expiration of the travel restriction order. The Sunday evening oil futures market open, which will be the first real market test of the Oman route. Tropical development in the Atlantic, and whatever Truth Social post lands between now and the next episode. Here is your 60-second recap. Trump called Iran's last chance before decapitation. Iran says the strait will never return to pre-war status. A tanker was attacked off Oman today. 20 ships crossed the strait over the weekend under U.S. Navy escort versus hundreds daily before the war. Oil dropped 5% to $80 on optimism. Ebola at 3,605 confirmed cases, 1,621 dead, 567 new cases in the most recent week, the fastest growing Ebola epidemic in recorded history. Travel restriction order expires August 12th. Food prices up across the board with 11% inflation projected by year-end. Your priorities: maintain fuel posture, complete pandemic kit, buy food storage, test backup power, walk your neighborhood, do the blackout drill tonight. If this show provided value to you, share it with one person, just one. That is how we grow this community. This content is AI assisted. I work as a medical provider 5 days a week. I build this platform by myself. There is no team. There is no crew. AI is a tool. The same way a stethoscope is a tool. The same way a tourniquet is a tool. The tool does not make the content real or fake. The person behind it does. The voice is AI. The man is real. The experience is real. The 2 wars are real. The clinical license is real. And every word you just heard came from me. I have watched people die because nobody around them knew what to do. I built the total preparedness program so that person is never you. Over 400 modules. Combat medicine. Grid down survival. tpp.suburbanprepper.com. Get in before you need it. This is survival. This is resilience. This is preparedness.